right, well, welcome everyone. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. It is January 11th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. Allow me to start by reading the mission statement aloud. The mission of Monument Academy is to provide a challenging, content-rich academic program offered within an engaging, caring, and positive learning environment. Established on a solid foundation of knowledge, Monument Academy emphasizes academic excellence, respect, responsibility, character, and exemplary citizenship. Would everyone please rise for the pledge? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone, lead us into our roll call. Start with Mrs. Belisle.
Here.
Mr. Wichkowski. Here. Mr. Carly. Here. Mrs. Clinton.
Here.
Mrs. Hoyda.
Here.
Mr. Ross. Here. Brian Graham is here. We do have a quorum with 7 members in attendance. We'll proceed forward with our agenda. Board, are there any additions or corrections that need to be made for the agenda tonight? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as distributed by unanimous consent. Looks like tonight we have one public comment sign up. Ms. Jen Brady.
My name is Jen Brady. Is that working? Okay. I'm the parent of a 7th, 5th, and 3rd graders attending Monument Academy. I'd like to express my gratitude for the board's continued focus and dedication to putting into place policies and procedures that protect and value all children, champion truth, and recognize and prioritize parental rights in all matters. I would also like to express support for the policy presented in November pertaining to gender identity and transition. I am grateful for the opportunity offered to our community to engage the process and comment on the draft policy, and I'm optimistic that we will hear a revised policy ready for board approval tonight. I urge the board to approve and implement a final policy at the earliest opportunity, but no later than this school year's end, 1 year after the issue was brought to the board's attention last May by my daughter, Avery. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Brady. Any other public comments for tonight? Lead us to our consent agenda. Board. The minutes from December 14th and January 5th have been distributed to you electronically. Any corrections or requests for the minutes to be read aloud? Hearing none, the minutes are approved as distributed by unanimous consent, and that will lead us into our reports of administration and committees, and we'll start with you, Ms. McClellan, from the Executive Director report.
Thank you very much. So it's been somewhat of a short time at school since winter break, and we had our meeting right before winter break. So tonight, I'm really going to be just highlighting a couple things from the my lead team and principals updates that I felt would be good for me to just talk about publicly. The other thing is we did one of my small updates and 2 other things that I have been working on. You guys already have in your agenda, so I'll be updating you on that. So I didn't really want to double do on that. So we did start the year off with a 1 May meeting. Our leadership team came together and put together a breakfast for all of the staff, and it was a lot of fun. We randomly planned it like a week before school came back, but as style with all our amazing leadership team, they pulled it together right away, and we had an amazing breakfast for everybody. Apparently my casserole is really good, and I really wanted the recipe. And then we had some walk-up songs. So everybody each of the team members came up with their walk-up song of I call it their Jimmy Jam. And what's something that if you were going to come walking up for like a sports thing, what's your song? And it was really cool to see the personalities come out in the different teams. Like our 4th grade team even came out in the Mission Impossible song, and they were in like black, and they were like coming around trying to do the Mission Impossible. And so it was just really fun to kind of see the personality, and I had them actually introduce themselves again, because I felt like there were a lot of people who they come to these meetings and they still sit with their people, but they may not know everybody's names, and so they may be like, oh, that's the face, and they are doing this. So that was kind of the intent behind it, was just to build some get people to know each other a little bit better and have a great way to start out the second semester. So, couple updates though, that's my notes. Kurt Walker, West Campus, phase 3, as we all know, phase 3 has started, of our construction in Carline. So we just really appreciate everybody's feedback and all the information that we've gotten, some of the ideas that we've gotten from individuals in terms of why can't we do this, or could we try this? And I want everyone to know we are hearing everyone's comments. We actually met yesterday morning to talk about some of those, and we've even come up with some messaging that maybe, I think will help clear and some misconceptions and whatnot. So this is phase 3 of 4 though. So we do have, this isn't the final version. We do have phase 4 that will come up this next year. And we just thank you for everybody's patience in trying to get into a new rhythm. And that's really what it's about, is trying to figure out what that new rhythm is, along with the weather and so forth. So just want to recognize that we really do appreciate everybody's comments, and we have heard everyone. We also, West Campus just finished up all campuses actually are finishing up their mid-year testing with NWEA. And all of the information will be in the next dashboard update. Kindergarten Roundup is planned for January 26th. It's always a fun time. I got to kind of sit in on a meeting, but I was just working, and they came in for the meeting, and it was just neat hearing all the ideas for Kindergarten Roundup. So the new generation of MA students is about to come, and so that's super exciting. Let's see, at middle school campus, just a couple of highlights. The band concert that was canceled was made up on January 4th. I heard it was an amazing concert again, and thank you for the support of Mr. Patterson. Teachers at middle school are also being very intentional about creating new positive connections and reconnecting with students. They're really working a lot through and establishing their social contracts in the classroom. I did hear a 7th grade teacher, as I was leaving work the other day, she commented on, "This is the best I've ever had in a second semester in all the years of my teaching, and the social contract is working so good, and the kids are taking it so seriously, and they're checking each other appropriately," and she was just on cloud 9 because of that. So it was really fun for me to hear that is being reinforced and how well that's working for our students. On January 12th, they have a big training for NWA that's focused on the topic of diving into the reports and assessments. So when they do get the information, the staff is going to be able to even know how to dive deeper into that to help with instruction. I put a note in here that the open house was canceled tonight, but it is rescheduled for January 17th. And then middle school girls basketball season has started, and they're in their first game, it was January 8th, and student council they announced their winter formal for February 3rd, and the event, that's for 7th and 8th graders, so there's some fun stuff that's coming up for middle school. High school has some, unfortunately, December, that virus that went around hit them hard, so they had 40 missed exams, and so they've been really working hard to review and make those up this week, and so Mr. Kennington put together a great plan for that for the high school students, and thank you, because I know how important that is, and it's tough when you get hit with that. So intent to returns are looking promising for high school as well, and 8th grade students, they have the highest retention rates to date for our current 8th graders to rising 9th graders. So there's some really good news that's coming out of all those intents. Also, last week, Mr. Kennington also, in the connections and community theme that was presented by Lena and the registrars, Laura and Kendra, Mr. Kennington's been really looking at that, and he's been working with the students in an assembly to talk about challenging their student body to fully embrace more of their norms and values with our social contract. So social contract came up again, and just really appreciated hearing that even the high school is working towards those goals as well. Mrs. Pelly, our HR director, she has been working with that Abacus transition. Things are going very smoothly with that. Mr. Gustafson will be so proud when he comes back from vacation to see all of the work that's been done with that. She's also been fine-tuning the onboarding process and gearing up for hiring season with our new job descriptions and planning for salaries that we'll be doing in our budget planning and our recruiting strategies. So, which is also a part of our strategic plan under talent initiative. So she's been working hard on that. Mrs. Arndt has, we've been working on that discipline matrix. One thing I wanted to point out is that this year we were chosen, we were the lucky ones to be chosen, I should say, for the NAEP, I think it's the National Assessment, I can't remember what it was. But it's through CDE and it's selected, many schools are selected through this process and they pick a sampling of 4th through 8th graders to take this the NAEP test assessment. And what that test does is it's the test that is used and quoted in the United States Educational Achievement in Reading and Mathematics to other developed nations. So when they rate our nation, they're using this assessment data in order to say this is how our country's doing in terms of reading and math and so forth. I never knew that, so this was an interesting new thing for me. But it's still optional for our students, so if parents don't want their kids to participate, it's definitely optional. But students will receive a certificate from the Department of Education for community service if they do take it.
It's National Assessment of Educational Progress.
Thank you, that is it.
Administered by the National Center for Education Statistics.
Yes. So that's what they use when they say, this is how we rank with Finland, or this is how we rank with China, and this is that they take these tests. Mrs. Leone, one of the highlights that she had in here was on January 19th. Our very own Peter Wise will be here presenting a professional development session in math. So remember we talked about that in our curriculum committee. And so Mr. Wise is going to be coming and doing a professional development for our staff in math with that. So I kind of want to hear that because then we want to steal him for some other professional development. So, and growth scores are going to be coming out. The elementary campus will also be having a school-wide assembly on January 18th to kind of celebrate the students who've made exceptional growth in middle of the year testing. So that's kind of that culture of assessment and really trying to build that up and get our kids excited about their growth. I'm really excited to announce some of our intent to returns that have come back. I know they're still working on the undecideds if I'm not mistaken, and so that's why this range that you see in the reports is a little bit different. It's like a range. So elementary school is 82 to 90%, middle school 91 to 96, 9th grade 26 to 37%, and 10th to 12th grade is 81 to 83%. So it really looks promising and we're excited about that. Open enrollment has begun and it will continue through February 9th. Athletics, high school boys and girls basketball teams are well into their season. Really excited to announce this one that an MA middle schooler, Addison Chaplet, is that how you pronounce it? Madison, how do you pronounce it? Mashalik. Competed in the USATF National Junior Olympics Cross Country Championships in Louisville, Kentucky on December 9th. And out of 410 athletes in her age group, Addison placed 5th in the nation and received an All-American. So, way to go, Addison. Maybe she needs to be a spotlight sometime. I mean, that's pretty awesome. And in facilities, I'm going to just point out one really, I guess, Tony McKenzie has been consistently assisting May at the East Campus with various tasks and cleaning and so forth and minor repairs. So thank you, Mr. McKenzie, for all of your help and support at the East Campus. And two main area of focus is homeschool program and succession planning that will be presented tonight in my further agenda items. Tried to go fast.
Terrific, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. McClellan, board, any questions? All right, hearing none, I will deliver Glenn's CFO report tonight. I'm just going to read aloud what he has sent to me. Hello, Board of Directors. Sorry I could not be in attendance, but my wife and I will be on vacation the week of the board meeting. The following is a summary of current projects underway. Fiscal year 22-23 financial closeout. We are now finalized with the fiscal year 22-23 financial closeout with just a few exceptions. The audit presentation from Holting and Company is on your agenda for this evening. We are very pleased with the work of Holting and Company. We found them to be smart, efficient, and helpful. Many thanks to their team, especially Jesse and Tom. Once the audit is finalized, we must reconcile our books to the audited numbers. This is completed and then upload a data file to LP38 for their upload to CDE. The audits have already been filed with the Office of the State Auditor and Lewis Palmer D38. Once the audit is finalized, we then must file a myriad of reports for bond compliance. Those reports are now nearly done. Next, monthly, quarterly financial statements. As you probably know, we are current with our financial statement reporting through November of 2023. Laura Poland and I have been working over the holidays to get December done before I leave on vacation, but not sure if it will quite make it. As a reminder, Lewis Palmer 38 will be adjusting our funding for the difference in our enrollment between the funding projections and the certified pupil count. We're still not quite sure which methodology they will use to collect the overpayment. In order to not overstate our revenues, I have been making monthly adjustments in the books to reduce the revenue to the correct amounts. Payroll processing change in SDS. You may remember that we brought our payroll system back into SDS effective July of 2023. While we had a few hiccups along the way with that conversion, this has gone relatively well. We are still adjusting out year-to-date records in the system in order that SDS will reflect the next check's numbers for employee W-2s. The board approved a new payroll manager in fiscal year 23-24 mid-year budget. We are now under contract with Abacus to run our payroll inside our SDS system. We have already met with Abacus and are in the process of getting them access to our system and all of our payroll reporting agencies, IRS, Colorado Department of Revenue, etc. Abacus is already proving valuable as they have already identified a few tweaks in the SDS system that need to be made. Employees should rest assured that this transition will be relatively seamless to them. We are using the same system at our SDS payroll module. We will just have different people running the payroll. They will also help us finalize the leave reporting and really allow us to utilize the full functionality of the SDS payroll system. Many thanks to Krista, Dawn, Diane, and Maureen, who have done an amazing amount of work getting us to the point where we are now ready to take our payroll to a higher level of accuracy and efficiency. Don't forget that we have to file W-2s and 1099s in January and the insurance 1095S in March. Next, fiscal year 23-24 mid-year budget. The board adopted the fiscal year 23-24 mid-year budget in December of 23. That budget is now uploaded into our SDS Finance module, and the reports being distributed to principals and the leadership team reflect the corrected amounts. I know that the mid-year budget was a little challenging, but the organization is better for it since we have already scrubbed almost every budget line item in every contract. We must continue our budget discipline for fiscal year 23-24, where we teach staff to live within their budgets and make changes throughout the year in a well-documented manner with appropriate approvals. Fiscal year 24-25 proposed budget. Yes, it's almost time. The budget seems to never end, and it's true. It's our financial plan, and it needs to be constantly tweaked. I have already started converting our budget template to get it ready for fiscal year 24-25, and I am in the process of developing a FTE compensation model that will allow us to quickly and efficiently adjust FTEs and salaries as they evolve. While very early in the process, we are currently anticipating a budget built on approximately the same enrollment that we have for this fiscal year. This will allow us to be a little more conservative with our budget and not have to repeat the fiscal year 23-24 mid-year budget angst. Next, energy conservation project. The new contract with Clockworks Data Wrangler is already paying off in utility savings. I hope that you have noticed that the lights are being turned off and temperatures are being adjusted for inactive periods. I know our East Campus neighbors are happy as they have been complaining about the lights being on all of the time. In the very first partial month of changes, we saw immediate savings, and we are anxious to see these savings grow as we dial in the timing and levels for utilities. Rest assured, we are not going to sacrifice the comfort of staff and students. We are focusing primarily on after-hours activity. I think we can all feel better about the energy savings, but also being better stewards of our planet. Next, investment income. We continue to maximize our investment income by proactively managing our cash and investments. Our general fund investment income peaked at about $18,000 per month and has recently dropped a little to about $17,000 a month as our cash balances have drawn down a little. I expect this trend to continue once LP 38 adjusts our funding for the enrollment decline. Please keep in mind that we are earning about $2,000 prior to the leadership change. Summary. I I am so proud of our financial team at MA. It takes a team to make it all happen, and I'm so thankful for everybody that helps, that we keep the business side of the house as accurate and timely as possible. A teacher can't perform at 100% if their paycheck is wrong, and the leadership of the organization can't make sound decisions without timely and accurate financial reporting. We have made a ton of progress in the last 12 months, and I look forward to continued improvements in the future. It's nice to be making minor adjustments as opposed to the significant changes of before. Thank you, Glenn.
Before we move on, Ryan, I have a quick question for Kim.
Yes.
Sorry, and it's not on budget, it's on your report.
Yeah.
On that national testing thing?
Yes.
The one that you brought up.
Yes.
Is it for all grades?
No, it's only
Okay.
a random sampling for 4th and 8th grade.
Fourth
And I
eighth grade?
believe, and it's, I believe they do, reading and math achievement. It doesn't have anything to do with growth because we don't test it again, so it's just looking at academic achievement.
And is it randomly chosen kids inside 4th and 8th grade?
Yes.
And will those parents be getting communication about that? Okay,
Yeah.
those are my only questions, thank you.
All right, that'll lead us into our board committee reports. I'm going to start with Highway 105, put down some stuff to share tonight. So board, 8 days ago, we transitioned to a new car line at West Campus. The Knollwood roundabout obviously opened, the temporary spotlight or stoplights on Highway 105 were removed from in front of the church, and the access through the church lot has been closed. This was all part of the Phase 3 plan in order to get us to the final phase, which will be completed this coming summer. The final phase will be the completion of the road right here in front of the school being constructed, which will eventually connect to the top of the S-curve by the teacher lot. That road will create the loop in front of the school and will be utilized in conjunction with the loop behind the school to create 2 circulation roads leading us back out to Knollwood. Say I'm extremely sympathetic that for many families, their time in car line, since we have merged, has created a significant amount of time for them now sitting prior to this new Phase 3. I am hearing and I'm seeing the concerns from the school community, but I do know that the admin team at the West Campus is listening and they are meeting regarding this topic. And I'd like to tell the community your concerns are not falling on deaf ears. They are diligently working to implement what they can do and put together an FAQ to help provide clarity why the school must circulate car line in certain ways. The whole premise behind the car line design that was funded by Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority as part of their highway safety project was to get vehicles off of Highway 105 and onto our school grounds to provide safety to our motorists and all other motorists on Highway 105. Understand that right now we are still currently backing up on Highway 105, hence the reason that the traffic speeds are reduced to a 30 mile per hour through that corridor. We finish with this, the West Campus admin team, again, is diligently looking at solutions to help while we work through Phase 3 for the next 4+ months. Our team spends hours each day standing in the cold, getting kids safely in and out of the building, and we are grateful for the many hours they are spending working to find solutions. I'd like to thank them for this, and I'd also like to thank our community for being willing to work with us through this next 4 months before we move into the final phase next school year. Any questions on the 105 report? All right, next up is curriculum, Mrs. Belisle.
No report because we haven't met yet and we'll be meeting in February.
SAC West, Mr. Ross.
No report.
SAC East, Mrs. Clinton.
No report, we have a meeting next week.
Governance, Ms. Hoyda, and Mr. Bichkowski.
The only report is that we're starting to work on prioritizing the policies that will be redrafted into that CASB format.
Perfect. Finance, Mr. Bichkowski.
No report.
Buildings and Facilities is myself and Mrs. Hoyda, and I do believe you have a report.
Yeah, the Safety and Security Subcommittee is continuing to meet regularly, and we are very pleased with the progress we're making. As you're probably well aware, we have added a second SRO, and so now we have a full-time person at each campus, so pleased to report that.
And
Excellent.
he's right over here today.
Mrs. Hoyda. RDC, Ms. Clinton, Mr. Carly.
No report, we are meeting next week.
And HR Subcommittee, do you have anything to report, Ms. Clinton? Okay, that'll lead us into board discussion action. The first item on the agenda tonight is the audit presentation. Board will have Tom Sister, a CPA with Holting and Company, joining us, and he's going to be presenting on that TV up here this evening, so Mr. McClellan, if you could bring him on.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
Great. Thanks for having me tonight. I sure appreciate that. I did send out a summary of my presentation that I think you all probably have that you can follow along with. I'll kind of walk down through that and can certainly answer any more specific questions as we go. But my team was out in late July initially, where we began our internal control testing. We designed our audit based on the results of those tests, with the audit work done on site as well as more work done back at our office. Glenn and the MA staff were just really helpful in providing the needed documentation. There were some typical first-year hiccups as we worked to get some historical information, that sort of thing, and work out funding compromises between the district and the school. But in the end, things went really, really well particularly for a first-year audit. We found financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects. So we issued an unmodified or clean opinion on your financial statements. Wanted to talk a little bit about the distinction between the government-wide statements and the fund statements. You have two different presentations within your statements, government-wide and fund statements. So the fund statements reflect how the school keeps its books on a day-to-day basis. Adopted budgets and reports that the board receives are based on that fund presentation. And then the government-wide presentation, government-wide statements, include capital assets, debt, and other long-term liabilities that are not included in the funds. So the first statement, the statement of net position, I'm going to talk about that here, is a government-wide statement. Essentially, it's a balance sheet for the entire school, wrapping up all your activities. And I'll hit a few highlights here. Cash and investments were up about $542,000 for the year. Other current assets were down due to decreases in grants receivable. So that basically means you got your grant money in sooner this year. Capital assets overall decreased as depreciation exceeded capital assets for the year. Looking at liabilities, at the end of the year, you sat at a $39.8 million loan balance. During the year, $830,000 of principal was paid, with a total of about $920,000 of debt service, including that principal, paid within the Building Corporation Fund. And then also within that long-term liability is a $12.9 billion liability for the school's proportionate share of PARA's unfunded liability. For anybody that's not aware of that, it's a accounting standard that's been in effect for about 10 years, and every PARA participating entity records your proportionate share of that liability, that PARA liability. That's about a $3.5 million increase from last year, really due to updated actuarial assumptions during the year. And we derive that information, we get that information directly from the PARA auditors, and then record your portion of that liability. Overall, net position or equity in the statement of net position decreased about $753,000, mostly made up of pension-related items, depreciation, and then that was mitigated by a positive increase in your activities for the year. Getting into a little bit more familiar territory and looking at the general fund, of course, the general fund is your main operating fund, and we kind of focus on that here. In this item number 4 here, we're looking at a ratio of your fund balance to expenditures, or how many days of expenditures would ending fund balance cover? And really, pretty similar to last year, about 77 days. That's a good ratio for a charter school. Like to see somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 to 90 days, with 90 kind of being a good sweet spot. So you're right in the mix there as far as that metric goes. In number 5 here, sticking with the general fund, kind of getting looking at some differences between this year and last year. State revenue increase. We see some pretty good increases there. About a $864,000 increase in per pupil revenue, and also increases in other state grant funding as well. Federal revenue was also up, mostly related to more COVID grant funding this year. But overall revenues this year were up about 24% compared to last year, and expenses were up about 19%. The combination of those two resulted in a $410,000 increase in fund balance or equity for the year. This increase in fund balance really compares favorably to your budget. You had budgeted about a $174,000 decrease in fund balance, and instead it went up $410,000. So good results compared to the budget. We did provide a couple of letters to the board following our audit. We did not have any internal control findings. I think where you've brought in some additional resources with Glenn on board too, helping with finances, that's helped quite a bit. And really, I want to express our appreciation for y'all bringing holding company, our firm, on to work on your audit this year, and thanks to Glenn and all the staff at Monument Academy for your preparation and good work. But does anybody have any questions on the presentation or on the financial statements?
Tom, no questions from the board. I appreciate your presentation. Board, you have received a full audit electronically. You should have had an opportunity to review that. We don't need to vote on anything this evening. I just need to know if there's any objections from this board on receiving the audit as presented. Hearing none, then the audit is officially received as presented by the board. Tom, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you,
sir.
Tom. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you too. Thanks, Jim.
All right, board, the next item on the agenda is the MA Homeschool Partnership presentation. Some quick background to this. The idea of launching a homeschool enrichment program is something that we've been talking about for quite some time. As the board worked through approving Mrs. McClellan's employment agreement for this fiscal year, part of the scope of work that we had put in there was to research and present her findings on bringing an enrichment program to MA. So tonight she is going to deliver on that and present on this program, and the board will be taking it into consideration to look at what the future holds for MA and some type of program geared towards homeschool enrichment.
Thank
So
you
we'll go
so
ahead and-
much. Yeah. This is definitely a big project to mark off the to-do. But I'm so excited to be able to do this for you all, because I know there's been lots of questions. And I've actually had the opportunity to do this twice. In District 49, started the homeschool program there as when I was the zone superintendent there. And then we had to start one over at New Summit during COVID. And so I was able to kind of pull from all of those years of knowledge, and in addition to utilize Mrs. Scala, Janice Scala, she's a parent here who did also some work during COVID for us at MA, and she just has a real heart for personalized learning and homeschool education, and so she helped me. So some of this isn't all Kim McClellan's work, this is also some of Janice's work and many of the meetings that she and I had. But we began meeting in September, so this has been a pretty quick turnaround. But knowing the background that she and I both have, it was fairly easier to put together for you all. But we did want to stand out. One of the things we wanted to do was make sure that we stood out different than any other homeschool program. And when she and I were meeting one day, when I was at Carta Digital BOCES, it's now the ER BOCES, we talked about, we had started a couple of personalized learning programs. And personalized learning was a really intriguing concept that a lot of families were really interested in. Now, this was more for a high school concept, but when she was talking to me, she said, this is something that we were doing and we were starting to do here at MA during COVID. And this light bulb went off for both of us, and we were like, this is the difference. This is the difference that we are gonna do, that we're gonna present to you all, is that there is a sort of a sprinkling of personalized learning into this, which a lot of homeschool families, sometimes they're fearful of doing homeschool, or they start homeschooling and then they go, oh my gosh, this is so big and I wish I just had a little bit of support, or I wish I had some kind of scope and sequence, or I wish I had, and all those wish I hads, we've tried to implement into the program that I'm presenting to you tonight. One of the other things that we wanted to look at with that was, but homeschooling is a big partnership, and Monument Academy stands very much behind parent choice and parent partnerships and looking at that community aspect. And so our title is the Monument Academy Homeschool Partnership, because we do believe that this program will be a big partnership between Monument Academy and the community. A couple of the highlights that you see in here, you'll see the table of contents, but I'm just gonna highlight some areas that you guys had a chance to read through this so that we can have some time for you all to ask questions. Denise would have liked to have been here tonight to help present with me, but her son needed to get to practice tonight. So I love it when moms get to be moms first, and so that's awesome. So the focus is the student grades we're gonna be starting with is kindergarten through 5th grade at this time. It will have, just as a summary, the initial staffing plan will have one program manager / consultant to actually oversee the administrative duties of the program. We'll also have one full-time teacher who will lead in all the instructional classes that we're required to do if we want to receive funding. We do need to have a licensed instructional teacher who does provide some instruction in school when they are here. Also, they'll do small group tutoring sessions, and this is the individual who will also help develop the personalized learning plans for each individual student and help them, partnering as a part of this partnership, helping partner with parents to say, let's look at different curricular selections that you have, and doing the curriculum scopes that will be provided to families. We also will be hiring a classroom assistant. They will be able to do lunch and recess monitoring, because we're not going to put that burden on to the elementary campus. So when they're having their own lunch in the classroom or they're going to recess, this individual will be able to help so that that teacher can have a break. You'll see that these are just draft job descriptions. We'll be working with HR definitely more directly in terms of some of more of the scope once the program is approved. But I just wanted to give you sort of what do some of those duties look like. So moving on to page 5, you can see that there's these 3 positions also will make up the core of the Monument Academy Partnership staff. And the students will be they'll be facilitating these classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And the students, the maximum capacity for this year, we were looking at 44 students and 25 students in order to make it a go, to kind of not be in the negative per se. So you guys had asked me about the feasibility, and those are the numbers that we really, so that 25 mark to 44 would be the maximum that we could do for year 1. That doesn't mean it can't grow more in the years to come. But that's what we were able to look at in terms of the staffing and some of the needs, and I'll be walking through some of the needs with you all as well. So you can see that the classroom breakdown is K through 2nd grade on Tuesdays and 3rd through 5th grade on Thursdays, with 1 FTE in addition to that managerial staff that's really a 0.2, and the program assistant that that TA sort of, is gonna be only 16 hours a week. And then 24 students to 25 students, we were able to bring that up just one, and to 44. So the marketing plan, we've talked with Kendra, and we're looking at, so the program manager would be working in conjunction with Kendra, and looking at what are some of the things that we can kind of piggyback off of, so that we're not having to hire a whole nother marketing, and so it's not, we can utilize the same resources for us. So we'll be, we would be developing a website, that's within our own website, so we'd have a section within our website. One of the other things Janice and I talked a lot about was the town hall meeting. And this town hall meeting, we thought would be, just to gain, where's the interest? Is there a lot of interest? So we can start with that intent, so we can see, would we be able to get to that 25 in order to begin the program? But we wouldn't be able to do that until we get your approval to even start doing so. And in here, we even talk about trying to do that in January, the end of January, so that might be a little difficult. But I think we could still have a town hall just to see what the interest is, and having some Q&A with Janice and myself to go over some details. But this will also help create the list. We'll have a registrars there. I think they'd be great to have there as well, and Kendra. But this would create that list, and then we could follow up with that to see what is the intent behind that. We also are looking at postal and email campaigns. Postal ones are pretty expensive, as we looked at that, and there is about a $2,000 budget that we have with this program as a program startup for marketing. So the email campaign would probably come more from like those town hall meetings, or putting in the intents, and then we can do follow-ups and so forth. So also utilizing our current social media to do a social media campaign. Janice knows the different homeschool groups lists, and looking at those lists and kind of posting into their newspaper advertising, and obviously word of mouth, as we know, as was presented to you last month. Word of mouth is one of the largest indicators of marketing for us. So we would be doing that as well. Startup costs is what's next. You can see the program, I had mentioned this when we had discussed this earlier, is that I wanted to be able to look at, because we know the first year is gonna have some costs that subsequent years won't be there. But some of the ongoing costs are obviously staff, but when you're starting a program, there are some needs with furniture, elementary classroom things, and I know Janice also met with Mr. Walker and talked about space, and this wasn't just, so it's not like he's just having a surprise today. There was some good discussions that came out of that. So we do have the elementary classroom right now, and some functional items that people would need, things like teacher computer, tables and chairs, and supportive ones are more age appropriate, like soft seating, lunch buckets, books, playground balls, jump ropes, things like that. But it should be noted that many of these items actually were already available. So Mr. Walker was kind enough to say, well, we thought we were gonna have another classroom. We have some of these things, so we wouldn't need to do that. So that's why our classroom setup would only be around $3,000. Curriculum lending library is a big thing for homeschool. Being able to have the resources of having something to be able to take off the shelf and be able to use, and then have that scope and sequence, and then have that personalized learning plan. That is a valued element within a homeschool outreach program. Items on that list may include the All About Reading, some CKLA that we already have, phonics pathways. I will tell you, New Summit just did a big curriculum readoption for a new math curriculum, and we have tons of Dimension Math that I told Janice we will sell that for barely anything, so that you guys can have some additional resources there. Otherwise, we're gonna send it off to the League of Charter Schools and see if what other schools would like that. It's almost brand new, which that's more of a Singapore math approach, that some families want that Singapore math approach. Saxon math, because that'll be going away, but we don't wanna get rid of those resources, but it doesn't mean homeschool families can't use that. So we can repurpose some of the curriculum that we already have and that we replace. We also will provide, which is a very valuable resource to parents, is that with core knowledge, what your kindergartner needs to know, what your first grader, those kinds of things. That book is very helpful in a scope and sequence for homeschool families. The other, so this curriculum lending library, so they won't be able to like keep it, but it's a lending library. We talk about, and then as I already said, having that with the personalized learning path that coincides with that curriculum that they're learning is a super valuable tool. And Mrs. Scalia knows that there isn't a lot of other homeschool programs that do those two together. They'll give it to a parent, and then it's up to them, and they come back and they say, well, you know, we're just teaching, we don't have the time to come up with this whole scope and sequence for you, and looking at pacing, and to help support you with that. They just leave that up to the parents, but some parents want that. This doesn't mean you have to use the personalized learning plan, but this is an option to families as they may be hesitant on doing homeschool. But we will provide what we're calling educational units instead of money. So other programs will say, we'll give you $500 or we'll give you $300. And sometimes people think that that means that we're just gonna give you a check for that. We wanted our families to know that these are considered units. So we're calling them, each semester they're gonna get 250 units of that curriculum lending with the personalized learning plan and so forth. These will include consumable, non-consumable items, and in addition to maybe some items that Monument Academy uses for distributors with even supplies and so forth that parents can then utilize with us. Families would be given the curriculum checked out. When they leave the program, they would need to give those back. And that gives full flexibility. Families will be able to work, again, in partnership with the teacher in terms of what that pacing looks like and what that personalized learning plan looks like. One of the other things that I know is later on here, but I'll kind of jump to that, is the assessment side of it, is providing, since we're already doing NWA and DIBELS, we could provide that assessment to the families even 3 times a year if they chose, to help inform their pacing guide and their scope and their curriculum that they're using in terms of that partnership. That'll help better inform where is my child growing in this process? You know, sometimes that's a question they see it, you know, within the work that a parent's doing, but they're like, I just want to know what are some other areas that I need to work on. And so that's where we would partner and say, here's some suggestions. Again, parents can take it how they want, but we're here to support that, which is a great tool. Curriculum supplies, and you can see here the curriculum lending library came to about $7,000, and then the educational units for 25 students is $6,250. Curriculum classroom supplies, this includes curriculum materials supplies that will be needed to teach the class. So when we're doing, maybe they're doing some art or things, they need to buy the paint and they need to buy the paper. Some of the things we can use with the elementary campus, but we don't want to do too much crossover. So we got to kind of navigate what that would look like. But there's the homeschool program partnership is going to have a real hands-on perspective to that, so that also needs some more curriculum supplies and classroom supplies. So each the teacher, because there isn't multiple teachers in this case, will have $400 a semester to budget to use to spend in those purposes. Now, if they don't need all of that, it's just based on an as-needed piece. So that was about $800. The educational plan, really, it's our obligation to partner with the families and support them. We'll have the licensed educational professional, support and resources, creating that personalized learning path, looking at the pacing, having the flexibility. Students will attend age-like classes, the 2nd and 3rd through 5th grade once a week. They will be participating in things when they're in class. They'll be doing things like math skills, read-alouds, novel studies, science, social studies, character, cursive, and special type of activities. So specials, you know, they won't be going to a specials that's in the school, but the teacher will be providing those specials opportunities like music and art and so forth. And then they'll give them some choice centers. We definitely wanted to offer some additional clubs and workshops or small groups and with one-on-ones being offered. Since that teacher is being a full-time teacher, those days that they're not instructing is where they're supporting teachers. And supporting parents. So they'll be sitting one-on-one with parents, and they'll be having small group where they can get the parents together. They can have some time to discuss what are some things that you're doing in your home, so they can help moderate that and facilitate some of those things. Participating in some even professional development, being able to have some time to learn, well, what are some good reading strategies? We need to learn some of those, and let me help support you and do some one-on-one and showing, or tutoring. They can be doing some tutoring on those other days as well. So they're just assisting in that student achievement and looking and assisting the parents through that process. Based on survey results and after the conclusion of the offering of assessments, the workshops that will be designed to offer more support for achievement activities too. Enrichment activities. So there's a lot of enrichment that parents are wanting, and this is something that she's been able to find through when she started to start other programs, and what I've seen is parents really want that outreach of those enrichment opportunities and to have other connections with parents. Let's see, I'm coming down to an end here. You can see that the calendar coincides and aligns with the elementary campus. And Janice Mrs. Scalia met with Mr. Walker about that already, and kind of looking at what are the breaks, the Thanksgiving breaks. You'll notice that we have 102 hours each semester scheduled into here. We were trying to be very intentional about that because the minimum that you can have is 90 hours per semester. So if there's snow days or there's students missing a day, we needed to add a little bit of a buffer to make sure that we were being compliant with that 90 hours per semester that's required for funding. Another thing that counts towards that is the workshops and the clubs and other contact time that also counts towards those hours that are even gravy with that. This schedule is subject to change that you see on here because it may change with what will work in conjunction with Mr. Walker and the elementary campus in terms of the schedule. But you can see that it brings everything from morning greetings and character education to social studies to having breaks and recess, doing more math skills. Again, this can be moved in and out, but we just wanted to give you sort of what does a day look like for the class on a Tuesday or Thursday. And then that final schedule, again, will be coordinated with administration.
Kim, hey, great work on this so far. It's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
And certainly this is, I think, could be a great program for MA.
Mm-hmm.
So just wanted to talk about how some of the revenues and costs work a little bit. You mentioned that there's some startup costs there. They total about $17,000.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that would be something that's spent this fiscal year, or is that something that's spent in July?
No, that would start in July.
Okay.
The only thing that would start in this fiscal year is if the board approves moving forward with this partnership, we would need to, I would need to extend the scope for Mrs. Scalia in terms of between February and June, in terms of getting some help in hiring and finding and doing some information sessions, doing, kind of getting engaged with parents and so forth. So that would be one of the only costs that would come up right now that we would need to extend that. Because right now, her scope, I finalized at the end of, actually it was yesterday. And I would need to extend that if the board so chooses to do that. And we have that built into the budget if we need it.
Okay, wonderful. So another question, if I heard you correctly, you have about 44 students sort of budgeted for this. It takes 25 students to make the program break even. Is that the correct way?
Yeah. I have that I can send to the board. I recall that I didn't give you guys the actual budget template that Glenn and I worked off of. But you can adjust the numbers on there too, like if it gets to 25, it shows what the total number. And I think we actually used all of our budget off of only 25. I can look really fast just to double, triple check that. But we're pretty intentional about using the minimum number when building the budget with even salary. And Glenn even took the average teacher salary, we took the program assistant total, and I think that was built into here. And what that is with benefits and para and so forth. So I can even, send this to you. Okay, so the total, with my list that we did in here, yeah, it was based off of 25 students, and this is, we took the estimated PPR that is at the governor's, that the governor, suggested, and it's now going through the School Finance Act. We took 5,347 as the estimate, because we had to just put it in half on what our PPR and what we're gonna be building our budget off of. And, so that total with 25 students is around $133,675. With, and then we put in student fees, so there is a student fee of $50. We also took the mill levy that we get. We did fundraiser revenue of $1,500, and we didn't use any interest or field trip and whatnot, but the positions equal to 1.6 staff people. Really, I think it's around 2. And then the total here, I had her, the total expenses with our total revenue, is around 150, it zeroed out at 151. So we had extra, and I told Denise, I said, let's just build that into other parts of the budget so that we can have our net be 0. So we can break even, so we know what the break even is with 25 students.
All right, excellent. And then the last question I have really is, like, what is sort of the timing of enrollment? Is this something that happens earlier, or can it, all the enrollment happen even in the summer?
So it can happen just like any other enrollment time. If we, I would say in timeline, if we did the town hall to do a Q&A and to start gathering, and I can have the registrar start, pending board approval, is say, hey, we can put an option on the intent to enroll for homeschool. We can do that as soon as you want. You could do it tomorrow if they wanted. And say, you know what, if you're interested, put your name on here, give us your information, come to our town hall meeting. At the town hall, we'll obviously capture some information in case people are coming that didn't enroll. I'm a big believer, and you gotta capture their information when they're there. That's I used to do marketing for a curriculum company, and those are hot leads. So you gotta get that, I mean, you have them in face-to-face with you, that's a good thing. So, and then we were thinking of having some follow-up, like I'm willing to even do some coffee chats with some parents if they wanna learn more about it. Sometimes they wanna hear from the parents who are doing it and interested. So as we get parents who are interested, I wanna harness that and have those people come and be our cheerleaders for the program. Because if you build it, they're gonna come. So we get those parents to say, I'm really passionate about wanting to have this at MA. So okay, well, come and help us and volunteer some of that time, because they wanna hear from those parents and how they can connect with that. They don't wanna just hear from the executive director. I mean, I'm a lot of fun, but I've done a lot of homeschool programs, but I haven't actually homeschooled my daughter, both my daughters. So, I don't think I would have been a good teacher for them. But my cousin homeschools, you know, I come from I wholeheartedly believe in it, but they really love to hear from the parents. So we'll be looking at that as well.
Would the town hall need to happen, I mean,
It would need to happen
Would
as
it-
soon as possible.
would it need to happen before that February 9th choice enrollment closure? Yeah, so that's a pretty quick turnaround.
Well, I actually have a question about that. Why?
Well,
Sorry.
that's okay. In all other enrollment, we will start with our seat offers on Monday, February 12th. So it would be helpful if we could utilize the same timeline
Okay.
if we're doing the same thing, if we're, be offering seats for that program specifically.
Okay. So there's your, okay. But it doesn't mean we can't enroll them and do intense after.
Correct.
After that.
Ab-
They can do that.
absolutely.
When I looked at like what was in the presentation and it mentions you doing it in February, that February 9th date just sticks out, like if there's the ability to do it before that, I
Yeah.
figure that's very helpful.
Yeah. And I don't know if this was a I mean, I assume this is since this is your first time and we're discussing it for the first time, and you guys, you may say, you know what, we wanna have the town hall. Let's see what happens with the town hall. I'm more than willing to do that. The question you're gonna get is the board really gonna approve this? So they're not gonna wanna put that in until they know. So that's why I kind of wonder if we had to do, if they, for whatever reason, we opened it after the 10th. Some people may change their minds, but it could affect our full-time attendance too. So that's the other thing that we're kind of navigating.
That's my question. So homeschool PPR is half, so are we worried at all, or is it a concern or a consideration that we might cannibalize some of our own full-time?
You could.
Is
It's not out of the question that you could. I have found through, even at New Summit, when we started it, and we started out with a certain number, and then kids ended up coming back, or we had people from outside come to the homeschool program, and they thought, oh gosh, I'm already here at the school, and I love the school. So
they
we ended up
converted to
converting
full-time.
to full-time,
Okay.
and so many people converted back to full-time that we couldn't have the program anymore. But because it fell below that threshold for us. So that is the risk we're taking.
There also was such a percentage of people that did choose to leave the homeschool that had expressed that they would be interested if we did do something. So I'd argue
The other way.
the other way.
Yeah.
Right, I'm just asking the question.
But yeah.
both, you know.
Yeah, because it could happen. I mean, it very well could. And that's what I think the town hall would give us sort of that, okay, well, where's the interest level? Do we know the number that left? Are they really gonna come back, or did they already go into a program that they don't wanna leave because they don't wanna lose that spot? I need to say that. I need to be able to say, these people went to homeschool, but I don't know until we start to say we're serious about this. I mean, I can tell them we're 90% sure, it depends. We gotta hit that 25. If we hit that 25, it's happening, and they go, okay, but what if you don't? And so if the board says, you know what, we're willing to, and budget-wise, Glenn and I look at it and go, okay, we're willing to take, this much in our first year, that it's gonna, we're willing to do it with 15. And we know that the next year but we know in year 2 and year 3, we need to have, this is the plan moving forward, that we need to have a break even next year. Because we know startup, that's why when charter schools start, we have the CDE startup grants, and we get grants and so forth to have that money to start the school. And so it's similar to that. And so that would be up to the board. I wanted to present a proposal to you that was net zero.
Couple other questions. The staff, minimal staff, the 3 people, the org chart, who do they report to? Do they report to the executive director? Are they under
Yeah.
Kurt? Are they?
They would report to the program manager. The teacher would report to the program manager, and the program manager would report to the executive director.
So it operates almost completely
Autonomous.
Okay,
Mhm.
and there is no
a great
overlap
question.
with, you already said that was specials, and they're, okay.
But
No.
here's something that's interesting that I found in other programs that I've started. They want to still be a part of, maybe, sometimes they go, well, could we be a part of an assembly? Could we be a part of some of those things? And that's where the program manager would work with the principal and say, what are some of the things that we can still be, you're not so autonomous that you're not feeling a part of the 1MA. Because my hope would be that this is still a part of 1MA, just like our preschool is run by a preschool director, but they're still a part of 1MA. I see that as a benefit to being in a homeschool program, is that they can participate in the craft fair that you guys have here, and the book
Land
fairs,
charts.
and the curriculum days, and if it falls on the same day or whatnot. I think that there's definitely some opportunity for that partnership, which is why the word partnership is so important here.
Great presentation, those are my questions. And the space used, oh, sorry, but I lied, one more question. The space used would just be a classroom here for now?
Yeah,
and
her, which
Okay.
classroom were you guys
You don't
thinking?
have to go into.
We don't know
crazy-
yet.
They don't know
Okay,
yet.
that's okay. I was just curious
Gotta know the
about that.
details.
Okay, thank you.
So board, I think the question before us is, are we okay with Kim hosting a town hall to garner interest, to see what that level of interest may be?
Well, then would we also need to do anything to extend the consulting contract for Mrs. Scala?
Yeah, you would just need to tell me it's okay.
Just through the town hall, essentially?
Or through, if we say that you guys wanna start the program, we wanna do, I could do, you know, a couple months. Let's say I did February and March and we saw what the numbers were looking like. I don't feel that Mrs. Scala is like, I have to have 6 months. Loves being able to partner with this with me. We've had a lot of fun.
She's a heart for
Dreaming.
MA.
Yeah, she's such a heart for MA, and we've been dreaming a lot, and it's been fun. I think that if we needed to say, you know what, well, let's give it a couple more months so that you guys can have some more, you know, fine tuning on what would it look like if we didn't net zero the first year. You know, that kind of stuff, like we could work through that. I think that's fine too.
And this is just a contract for service with her?
Yes,
correct?
that's it.
The next board meeting is February 11th. The choice enrollment window closes the 9th. So those are just kind of dates to like keep in mind. I mean, if there was the ability to have the town hall prior to that and put this on the agenda again in February to look at what happens in the town hall, or
Sure.
those are dates for you to keep in mind for the board. If not, but there's March. but-
Motion on the town hall approval?
I mean, if there's no opposition to the town hall, then no. Should
Okay.
we have consent to move forward with that, and if we could have findings
Mhm.
from that town hall, kind of the level of interest, if you will,
Yeah.
to the February 11th meeting.
And I think it's February 8th.
Yes.
February.
Oh, is it the 8th?
I won't
Okay, it is, it's
be,
even earlier, I didn't.
I won't be at that meeting, but I know I could depend on like Lena and Kendra and maybe Janice will be able to present. It's just harder for her to present in the evening. But I would have a full report for you, without a doubt.
And then if we make a determination on February 8th to
Mhm.
proceed forward based on the level of interest, what is our, for lack of better terms, drop dead date to get this off the ground for August?
It would be, I would say, March. I mean, because then we would have to make sure that so you would have to I would say you would want to have an approval on the program itself to move forward at that February meeting.
Because families are gonna be making decisions.
Yes.
I mean, if they're looking at interest here, but they can't guarantee it, they're still gonna be looking at other places where they can secure seats, so.
So best case scenario would be right after that.
Feasibility-wise, March, we could still launch.
Yes. Because I can still utilize Janice as the program manager to start, you know, us getting the finding the teacher and starting the enrollment, starting curriculum stuff, working with, Mr. Walker, and I don't think she wants to be the program manager necessarily, but she's willing to help with that. So we would have to also maybe find a full-time program manager and coordinator person for that as well, so.
Perfect. Excellent job on this.
Thank
have
you.
consent to move forward with
Thank
the
you.
town hall, and we
I
look
will
forward
give
to
her the good news.
February 8th.
And let us know when that is, because
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
available.
no, everybody will
I
know.
wanna come and
Yeah.
be a cheerleader.
Yeah. And if the public knows anybody who's really interested and can help volunteer and get this going, by all means, we embrace the opportunity, so.
Right, next up is the Executive Director Succession Plan. Board, as you recall, we had placed this into the scope of work for Mrs. McClellan for this fiscal year, and tonight she's gonna deliver on the succession plan. This is a rough draft that we as a board need to look at and possibly consider approving tonight, because our window is closing for going out and posting for an executive director. The intent would be to go out no later than early part of February and open up. So when we go through the succession plan tonight that Kim's gonna present on, you'll see some of these steps that we need to take in order to get to that point. So, Mrs. McClellan,
Yeah.
thank you.
I've been busy. Thankfully, I had a nice winter break and whatnot, but, I just really appreciate, I just wanna kind of start out with how much I personally have enjoyed the leadership team, the board, the families, the teachers, everybody, this is a family. And it's kind of a bittersweet to be able to say I'm putting together a succession plan, but I know that this plan, I took this extremely seriously because I know that this really kind of catapults what even more the future of MA. This is a big deal. And so I want you guys to know I took that very seriously with the heart of where I have made so many connections and how much I hope that the new incoming executive director will be able to have as well. You'll see in the introduction, I also did a lot of research. This is the first time I've put together a succession plan, full disclosure. I've never had to do that. So it was like putting together a little bit like a dissertation, I felt like somewhat. So it was fun to do the research and be able to look at what other districts and charter schools and what are some national sort of best practices. And so I did a lot of that for you guys so that the steps that we're taking really are intentional for you guys moving forward. Choosing the executive director is definitely one of the most important responsibilities of the board of directors, and I know you all know that. I will say that research does show that teacher turnover hinders student achievement, and principals and school leaders are the key drivers for whether teachers stay or go. This is they look at who is in the leadership position, and I always tell people through my Capturing Kids' Hearts trainings that I do, I tell people, do you want to work for somebody with a heart or tools? And many people say they prefer somebody with a heart. You can teach the tools, but a lot of people, they really want somebody who has a heart and who has a love for the organization or really stands by that mission. And so, teachers are the key people in what happens with student achievement, and so that leadership is a big part of it. We need to consider, there's different steps in here that you'll see that we need to consider that you all, in identifying who you hire for this position. Also, I already talked about the local research that I've done. I also looked at our current strategic plan and the comments. I really kind of went back to my archives in my brain of all of our strategic planning meetings that we had and what were some of the discussions around there, some of the survey outcomes, which one of the fall staff survey results we just finalized, Anna and I did. And as we were kind of finalizing, I looked at some of that, informal conversations that I've had with staff and parents even, and some students. I've talked to some students. So kind of looking at all of these pieces is what is presented to you tonight. Step one, the necessary steps for an ongoing good board practices in looking at this is understanding the organization's strategic priorities, strengths, and weaknesses. So being able to really look at that and understanding what our strategic priorities are and identifying the competencies and characteristics that the next executive director needs to have. Executive director's evaluation and goals to achieve. This is something that one of the necessary steps is you think about, okay, we're going to be evaluating this individual and what kinds of things are we going to be setting goals for. That's something to be thinking about, is what that evaluation is going to look like and what are some of those goals. Leadership development priorities. Across the board when looking at any of the succession plans, and I have even witnessed this myself as an executive director, this is a lonely position. Being a superintendent, being an executive director, I was talking to Kurt about this a little bit before this meeting, and I said, it is a principals, he's like, I can't even imagine a principal is sometimes even lonely because you don't really know, there's development out there, but to try to take yourself away from the organization and go get that professional development is sometimes really hard. And it's also lonely in that we don't always have a lot of people to talk to, right? And so leadership development is so key. That's one of the reasons why I love doing my leadership training that I do with the Flipper Group and Capturing Kids' Hearts, is that every time I go and do a training or I'm networking with other leaders, it gives me the opportunity for leadership development. So being able to have those, make that a priority for you all with the new executive director, as soon as you start to find in an interview, here's some strengths that this person has, and I really love that. But if I could just help them develop this part of a weakness, or give them some mentoring support, or give them some support outside, opportunities to be able to grow that, that is very valuable to people like me. Being able to know that, the board prioritizes that as well, just like I have to prioritize that for, the rest of my school community, we need that as well. Financial resources and planning. This is a big one as well. I think sometimes we go into, okay, we know we really need this position, but we forget about some of the resources and planning that goes into, preparing, for that role. And, we think that it's just the compensation of someone when get those leadership opportunities and maybe the conferences or some of that compensation package. How does that build into the budget? And, we'll be working, Glenn and I will be working on that with you all as we do the budget development, process as well. So including salaries and benefits, possible performance bonuses, these are things that the board would need to consider. Step 2 is establishing committees, and this is one of the bigger ones that I think is gonna be, if approved, literally tomorrow, I'm gonna be setting dates with the HR director and looking at, getting our committees together as soon as possible. But there's, 3 essential committees that you'll see in the succession plan. The first one being, the informal advisory, committee. This committee, is one board member, not on the HR, committee, the board HR committee, subcommittee, 2 parent representatives from each campus, 2 teachers, from each school, 2 hourly staff members, 1 representative from specialized student services, so that's like special ed, gifted and talented, and 2 members from my executive leadership team. This would be led by the human resources, the director of human resources, and by myself. The task that this informal advisory committee is gonna do is they're gonna provide recommendations to the screening committee on job descriptions, interview questions, and an interview rubric. When I was looking at succession plans, I think a lot of times we go into interviews and we forget about the rubric and how everybody is scoring, and is there a cohesiveness in how somebody is looking at the interview questions, and what is it specifically that you're looking for? What is the ideal candidate on a rubric to this person doesn't qualify for that? And so this committee is gonna help make recommendations to the hiring committee and the subcommittee for that. They also, so this committee must meet next week. And in order to provide that job description to the HR subcommittee no later than January 24th. We're on the race, to get the best candidate for you guys. The next one, so the informal advisory committee also provides just valuable insights for you, and looks at the qualities and qualifications, identifies areas that the school needs for consistency, and possible gaps that, the new executive director will need to fill. So what are some of the gaps that I wasn't able to fill for you all? And that's a piece that, what was I able to do really well? And what are some things that were gaps that then you might be looking for another executive director? The screening committee is also meant to be a very fair and transparent, to help create that fair and transparent hiring process. I really kind of put this in, and I appreciated Lindsay and Ryan's feedback on this as well, is that the screening committee is really there to help not make it seem like avoid any accusations or bias of discrimination on what with the board, okay, well, only the board got to do it, only these 2 people got to screen the applications and whatnot. So, the screening committee will be able to build that trust and confidence in the new executive director from the very beginning, so being able to kind of set that tone. The board HR subcommittee is, this is gonna be Ryan Graham and Lindsay Clinton, and CFO and the director of human resources. So that's the subcommittee that will be getting all that information from the advisory committee. The tasks for the HR subcommittee will be to work with the HR director to collect the job description, interview questions, and interview rubric recommendations. They'll be the creators of that job description, and then formalizing the interview rubric and interview questions for the board. They also will be creating a screening checklist for the screening committee. So as you have the advisory committee going and giving information to the HR subcommittee, then the HR subcommittee is gonna be looking at a checklist that the screening committee needs to say, hey, these are the things that we need to identify. Make sure when you're screening applications, you're looking for, those are the look fors that you have. Once the job description is finalized, the board's gonna call a special meeting in order to approve before posting. So you can see there's gonna be a timeline for a pretty quick turnaround on this. And then the committee will also provide all the applications to then the screening committee to be able to screen. The screening committee will be comprised of the board HR subcommittee and CFO and then myself. So I'll be a part of that screening committee and all school principals. Now, here's the difference though. If a school principal wants to apply, a current school principal wants to apply, obviously they can't be on the screening committee. So they would have to recuse themselves from that. Tasks would be to approve the interview questions and the rubrics within 2 weeks of the interviews, and then review the applications and choose 3 finalists to then bring to you all to interview. The hiring process will be the board will perform formal interviews in an open session. This is one of the recommendations from the HR subcommittee is to have all interviews be in an open public meeting. They will also have an informal meet and greet with the community, and then after open session interviews, the board will convene in about a week, have a special meeting to perform that formal vote in an open session as well. So all of these, the screening committee and all these committees are also gonna be there to help ensure a seamless transition as you start to do the onboarding process in the succession plan. Step 3, communication strategy. This is, transparency is key. These are the key elements of this communication plan and strategy is transparency. The HR subcommittee should work collaboratively with HR communications and various forms of communication on how the process is going. We'll keep people updated. Clarity. My leadership team, and people know that this is one of my favorite words, is when individuals have clarity, fear goes down, anxiety goes down, but the more clarity our community can have and the more communication that we can provide that clarity to our community, the better we're all gonna be for that. So that's one of the key elements to what we're doing in community. Sensitivity. Sensitivity, this is it's already starting, I'm gonna say. I heard when people have heard that I'm not going to put my name in the hat, it's been sensitive. I know I'm connected to people, and this can be a real sensitive time. And so being able to look at, during this transition process, is thinking about what this means for your staff, what this means for the people on the committees. And changes can be difficult. And so I'm gonna do my best to help support you all as the board through this process and ensuring that we're all sensitive through this process so that people know that they can voice their concerns when things arise through this, or being able to communicate that, because there can be some anxiety with, oh my gosh, who's the next person that's gonna be in that seat, and and this is a time when teachers are trying to figure out if they're coming back or not. So the more sensitive that we can be to that, the better we all will be for our staff as well. Letter to the community from the board chair throughout this transition process and announcing the new incoming director, and thanking me for being here. So thank you. That was a little addition. Step 4 of this succession plan is the transition and onboarding. So once you've identified the best executive director for MA, being very mindful of what that transition is going to look like and how you're going to onboard them. You'll see that the outgoing me, I will plan some working sessions for 2 months before their first day, providing them with a clear understanding, that clarity piece and the sensitivity again to what this the school culture, the values, goals, strategic plans, some of the challenges that they're gonna be faced with. Especially if not an internal candidate. So if an internal candidate, maybe the internal candidate is chosen, I don't know. But they know some of what's going on, but an external candidate they need to have some time to be able to onboard, be able to have some time to go and meet people, be able to have some time to have some meetings and get engaged so that they can be able to develop some of that relational capacity prior to their first day. Additionally, the new executive director will have set dates to observe, including having meetings with parents and students and really building, and also a big one that I would really love to be able to do is help to build that relationship with the district. I've been blessed to be able to know, multiple people at the district already because I've worked with them before. So being able to bridge that gap for the authorizer and having them meet and have some meetings together, all side by side, is also a key need, I think, and a priority that you guys will have. I also believe that they should be expected to come to your board retreat in June, because that's where you guys are gonna set the goals and work collaboratively with them in setting the goals. The training and development I talked about, and then training on it's necessary skills to make sure that this person can succeed in this role. One of the things I have found is, you can have people who are really good at the interview, and then when it comes down to the areas of like school policies and procedures and authorizer partnerships and what is a contract, the ins and outs of budget. I remember you asking me a question when you guys had interviewed me. You asked me something about budget, and I'm not a CFO, but I know enough to be dangerous, right? And I know enough to help with that district side, that I know contracts well enough. So maybe there's a gap with that I think it's really good to ensure that during that transition and onboarding, that's very key, because that's a key part of this position. I also believe, and I put this in there because as I was developing this, I can only wish the first day that I was the zone superintendent in District 49 that I could have had a mentor for 6 to 12 months, just to be able to have somebody to talk to. Again, this is a lonely role, and knowing, hey, I could just pick up the phone and call this person and say, hey, what would you do in this situation, or what does this mean, or do you know somebody who I can contact? So this can also be done with an outside mentor consultant and also be a safety net for you guys. I feel like a mentor consultant could be someone who not only is supporting the executive director, but also supporting you all. Because I know there's been questions that you all have had, even from me and Glenn, that you're like, I didn't know that. So what are some of the things that this mentor consultant can help support you guys so that then that position is even more successful? So the other piece, okay. Oh, regular check-ins. So one of the things that you guys have been really good at this with me, Ryan and Lindsay. We have our regular check-ins. This is another key piece that I think is good in that transition time, that the mentoring consultant or mentor can sit for a few months and say, be there to see if there's anything that might be missing that you guys can have with that. So that's another piece that may be helpful. Not sure, it depends, but you guys have done a great job with that with us. But just also making sure that the executive director is on track to provide the best support and guidance for that. Step 5, you can see the timeline. It is a tight schedule. So after the 24th, the 24th through the 31st is when the board subcommittee would be meeting to draft that job description. And then February, with the hope of that very beginning of February to post the position through March 1st. So you would have a month to get some interest. March is when the screening committee would meet to review the applications that's been passed by the board of HR subcommittee, and then narrowing it down to 3 individuals. The week of March 18th would be the special board of directors meeting and town hall for interviews. So right before spring break, it will be coming. And then April 4th, the hope would be to identify your finalists so that then I could begin working with starting this whole big transition process that you guys see in here that I tried to go through as quick as I could. Step 6 would be, this is just for after. So step 6 and 7 is more kind of after, but they're two very key parts to a succession plan. The other thing that I did not, step 7 in here has the talent pipeline and emergency executive director plan. This is something that many organizations just don't have. And I don't know what the perfect emergency plan is, right? But if you're developing a talent pipeline, then in all my research, if you have a good talent pipeline and leadership development from within, and you have people sitting in certain roles, just trying it out. Hey, come shadow me for a week. I see some potential in you. See what this is like. Come sit in some of these meetings with me. Or do you have this interest? Maybe they're really good at HR and you're like, gosh, I want to see how you would manage this situation. Maybe it's in some evaluation pieces, and they're really good at that. Having that talent pipeline, though, helps with the emergency succession plan, or emergency plans, that if, for whatever reason, somebody gets sick, and unfortunately MA has experienced this before, and having somebody to say, wait, this person, and this person can be the role of the executive director for a few months until we figure out what's happening. So that's the next step that the mentor, consultant, new executive director, and the board should be thinking about is how would that look? And then obviously the evaluation planning that you guys would need to do at that last meeting.
So I have a question / comment, and first of all, excellent work, thank you for putting this together.
Thank you, Karen.
Really my question is both that a question and concern. Posting it for a month or even less than a month, if we're looking at February, 29 days this year, I believe.
Yeah.
A little bit less depending on when we get it posted. Do we believe that's enough time? And then the follow-up question is, where we post it will determine the quality of candidates we get. So are there any thoughts on where we would post?
So, the posting side of it, I would need to, I know Krista works with a lot of different, like even with Frontline, they have suggestions of places, obviously Indeed and the district, the league we would be posting, there's the EAC, there's a lot of like Brad Miller, he knows people who, so it's also kind of like word of mouth. In the charter school world, that's what I have found. One thing that I did bring up in developing this was, and I don't know that you, and I can have Krista look into this, is hiring a headhunter. A lot of districts, when they say they're going out to interview places that are gonna do the superintendent search, they're really headhunters. And they're looking, and they get like a certain percentage of the salary, and they have the network of people that go into LinkedIn. I mean, obviously we would post in LinkedIn, we would be posting, we can put money down on, the different posts for Indeed or some of the ZipRecruiter and whatnot. Now, is that enough time? And the headhunter side, let me finish with that. I don't know, and that's something the board would need to decide with Glenn and, myself looking at the budget and with your board budget. Is that something that we could afford? But they then would be doing this, everything that I just wrote you is really what they would be doing, except maybe they know the network of people to go and speak with. I haven't experienced that, so I'm sorry, I can't answer that fully, other than where I would end up posting. Timing. I don't
Maybe
know.
a follow-up question, is
Yeah.
the first truly a hard deadline? I mean, maybe it is, we target this for February through March 1st,
Sure,
but not have it be a hard deadline.
sure.
We're just not getting.
Because maybe you have
Yeah.
two, and you're like, I can't, because we don't, and I know a lot of, when Glenn comes back, I think, we really need to be working on what that compensation package would look like. believe it or not, Glenn and Kristen and I have already kind of started to, we were brainstorming, other items that is a compensation that's included, and Krista had a great idea. She was like, sometimes, that leadership development that I was talking about, and being able to tell somebody, you have a mentor. I would give up thousands of dollars to know that I had a mentor, to be able to say, this is a part of your compensation package, because of maybe some areas that I feel like I want to be able to talk to somebody. I wanna be able to have some good development, because I'm not so sure about the authorizer side, I've never really done that, but I have done this. Those are some really valuable things that's part of a compensation. So that's the piece that I think we're gonna also need, because that may attract, that depends on how that's going to attract certain individuals as well. But I would say the March 1st is, if you don't have a lot, you guys can, then we need to adjust.
Right, then the rest of it kind of has to be a little bit
And,
flexible.
and this is the time, I will say, which is why we're kind of putting this into this time period, is most superintendents and executive directors, their contracts are saying their boards need to let them know by February whether or not they're renewing their contract. So people are gonna be out, this is the time period. And so I would say, yes, it's still maybe enough, because during February and March timeframe, people are starting to apply and look on places to see, and maybe somebody wants to relocate to beautiful Monument, Colorado, who knows? In the cold today. I know Casey left for Arizona, but, Monument's amazing, so. But I don't know, it's gonna depend. And I'll do whatever I can to make sure that, I'm already putting out words that you guys are looking and, talking through, so word of mouth, you can let them know.
The mentor position that you're speaking of, is that something that we would pay somebody to do that? Okay.
Temporary, and
Right.
it really depends on, the reason why I found through, obviously, a lot of my research is that transition and onboarding is gonna be, in some cases, some people say, oh, well, I don't need it. I think the board needs to, when you start interviewing, you're gonna be like, I think I've identified some of the areas that I would then task a person to say, I need you to kind of mentor through this. We need you to help with development through that. You're smiling. You really see it right on your face when you're talking about that.
I agree
Yes.
with you on the mentoring. I've run into this,
Right,
where
Right.
there's a level of hubris for some that would say, well, I don't need to be mentored, but
yeah.
Or just like what you pointed out before, like, somebody might be an excellent candidate, but they have no experience with, working,
Authorizer.
right,
Right.
working with the district and
Right.
working out all that kind of thing.
And that could be 10 hours in a couple month period that you're saying, it's a safety net for the board somewhat too. And that's sort of the piece that, it's interesting, because I don't necessarily, as much as leaders will say, they'll be quick to say this is a lonely position, and gosh, I wish I had this thing, go to conference after conference. But it's really difficult to sometimes say, but this is an area that I need help in. And if they're given the permission ahead of time, to me, that's super powerful, so.
There was one thing on here under the informal advisory committee under tasks, where it reads, provides recommendations to screening committee, that actually needs to be, provides recommendations to the HR subcommittee. That's
Oh, okay.
that's the one, and just missed that.
I think you have this, so would you mind making that
Uh-huh.
change, and then we can.
And I also found an extra period that I think we could, deletion
Okay.
of that.
I grammared this like nobody's business because of other things that I've sent you before that I was like, oh my gosh. So, I really tried to do a much better job as more of my dissertation on this one for you all, so. And so that is a question, I guess, on the informal advisory and, screen, we already know the screening committee, but the informal advisory, is that something that, the HR subcommittee with me and Glenn, maybe we just, I mean, I don't wanna necessarily spend the time to put an application out, and then we gotta look at that.
Yeah, the timing, I was gonna say,
I think we need to volunteer.
and it's a lot of
little bit.
people, and that
Yeah.
was a question too, is what, with the time constraints that we have, does there need to be some flexibility in that, if we just aren't, if kind of,
Oh, yeah.
if you, here's two
Yeah.
dates, you're being offered an opportunity to be a part of this, and you can't make this 2 dates, then
We need to move
apologies,
on to
we're
that.
we'll have to find somebody else or whatever, because it would be great ideally, but it's like 12
Right.
people to try and schedule into a very short amount of time, so,
I think if you look at, okay, if we ended up, that's why I think I put 2 parents, because if we get 1 parent, awesome. If we get 1 teacher from each school, we get 2 teachers, awesome, we have teacher representative. Hourly staff sometimes gets missed. And this person is overseeing the entire organization, and they're just as important. Same with like specialized services, sometimes they get overlooked too. And, but we also have a small specialized service team. So maybe the teacher is represented with the specialized service team member as well. So we can do some overlap if you guys are giving me the ability and Krista the ability to say, this is the best case scenario, but we need to at least have these representation. I think that's fine.
Maybe one way to work that is we say, this is directionally what we want to achieve, and we're gonna do our best to meet all the things you've mentioned here, but we're not holding anyone to the letter of the law and the dates.
sure.
We're, just the thought,
Yeah.
you wanna say it's directionally correct.
Sure. It's gonna it's gonna just kinda need to be a little bit of a living document in that sense.
Great to have on paper, and now it's to put in action, right?
Is there any objections from the board on the committee setups for informal advisory, board HR subcommittee, screening committee? Is there any objections to the process? Is there anyone on this board that would like to sit on the informal advisory committee?
I'll do it. Oh, Emily Craig, who's going?
We could actually have 2, but you would.
Well, why don't we, both
Do
it,
I thought the same thing.
and then if some of these meetings, one of us can't be there, then we're
Yeah.
covered.
Split her up. Okay, that works.
The HR subcommittee, this board voted on back in July. Is there any objections to Lindsay and I continuing on the HR subcommittee? My intent, excuse me, is to meet with the CFO before we have our special meeting to determine some preliminary compensation packages that we'll bring before the board into that special meeting sometime at the end of this month, before we finalize the job description and the compensation package, because that obviously is going to be hand in hand. And then we would post immediately thereafter. We should have some more information on where all we can be posting and what that will look like. So, apologize, I'm losing my voice.
And then, so Brian, I just wanna make sure I understand what special meeting
We would call a special meeting,
you're going to, but
At
not
the
yet
end.
scheduled.
not yet scheduled. The intent would be for the informal advisory committee to meet, propose some questions that are what they would like to see in a candidate. And then the HR subcommittee, along with Glenn and HR, will develop posting, job description, compensation package, bring that before the board to approve before we go out for hiring in February.
So with the timeline, if it's going kind of according to plan, we would be calling a special meeting sometime, well, so the HR subcommittee would meet around that week of January 24th to 31st, probably try and be towards the beginning side of that, because then we would need to call the special meeting within that range too.
Yeah, just, that's my concern, is just we need to get it scheduled.
Yep. Yep.
We'll be short on time.
And then you you heard within this process too, that the intention would be to have 3 candidates ideally that then would come before an open session meeting to be able to answer questions. And then following that meeting where the board would be able to ask questions in that context, the community would be able to have kind of a meet and greet.
Do we have to have the compensation discussion in a special board meeting before we post? Couldn't we have that from?
So, you can put, what we can do also is put you usually put like a range, and, if you know that mentoring and having leadership development is an important piece of this position, you can include it in there and saying this is provided, but you could put a range, and then you could technically have that discussion after. You wouldn't necessarily have to, but we have to look at it as, especially the range, you would need to know, because if it's, that's gonna really draw in people or not, and any other items within the salary range, if you wanna say, these are benefits are covered or something like that, but I don't think you have to have big details, you just wanna have a range with it, but I don't know, maybe that would help with the timeline and getting people quicker, but it's not a have to. But people may ask those questions, because sometimes those questions come up on, do you have any questions for us? What is your compensation package, what do you offer, do you offer self, no, I would never ask those questions in an interview, because those are always that's something to be discussed later, that's not the important part, right? But I think it may entice, like there may be something built into that could entice somebody quicker, I don't know.
I agree that we need to probably go ahead and schedule a special meeting. I would propose either Tuesday the 30th or Wednesday the 31st of this month. Tuesday the 30th?
So that meeting, you guys are going to be approving like the job description?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. And so the job description could just have a quick range, that then there could be further discussion for you all with more compensation if needed too, but we'll see how much you guys can get with that range.
It would be part of talking with Glenn.
Yep.
You might have asked Mr. Pennington a question. The 30th, we have NHS inductions, is that in the evening or during the day?
It's scheduled for the evening right now, but it is flexible. Happy to move that around if we need to.
Or
I'm
could we
good
do
with
Wednesday?
the 31st.
Okay.
I can do either one.
Can't make either.
And you're wanting it to be evening?
I'm leaving that up to you guys.
I can do one.
I prefer evening. Wednesday the 31st, 6:30 PM, location to be determined. Call a special meeting.
Job description.
Any other discussion on the succession plan as presented?
Yeah, you're
thank you.
welcome, thank you, actually, right?
Yeah.
But thank you, this was, as much as I was like, oh my gosh, I have this now, it's here now. And so, there was so much, there's a big benefit to that, so I also thank you, because it was a great experience for me to be able to put it together for you guys.
All right, board. The next item on the agenda tonight is the Parental Rights Policy Revised Draft First Read. To give some background to this, on November 9th of last year, the Governance Committee read aloud a first draft policy in regard to gender transition and parental rights. At that same open session meeting on November 9th, the board provided some feedback on that first read draft policy and asked the Governance Committee to take that into consideration and bring back a revised draft. That same evening, the board also decided to open additional lines of communication with the MA community and ask for their thoughts on the policy in order to garner additional community feedback. Over those next several weeks, as directed by the board, Executive Director McClellan received many community responses expressing approval, disapproval, concerns, and considerations about that policy. Since receiving and reviewing the community feedback, I took it upon myself as the board chair to write a new draft, which takes the original draft from November 9th, some of the considerations that were presented by the community, and some of the considerations that were voiced by the board in open session that night. At this time, the board has not had any discussion around this particular revised draft that I'm introducing tonight and will momentarily read aloud. The crux of the issue is this, as the way I see it. Do parents have the right to the control, care, and custody of their minor children when it comes to a minor child wanting to express, identify, or transition to a gender that does not align with their biological sex? The revised draft policy that I'm introducing tonight aims to further protect those parental rights when it comes to the control, care, and custody of our children while following the laws that govern Monument Academy. Policy name, Parental Rights Policy. The purpose. The purpose of this policy is to provide a procedure that informs and partners with parents of minor students who want to identify or express or transition as a gender or some other form of non-binary status that does not align with their biological sex with respect to school records, school policies, and use of school facilities. Monument Academy, MA, supports parental rights and the privacy and protection of all students, understanding that a student may seek transitioning to a gender not aligned with their biological sex. MA supports the right of parents to oversee the care, custody, and control of their minor children, especially those minor students wanting to transition to a gender not aligned with their biological sex. Scope. This policy applies when a student communicates or demonstrates to a staff member the student's desire to transition to a different gender with respect to school records, school policies, or use of school facilities. Examples of transition may include a student who wants to express or identify as a different gender, a student who insists on the use of preferred pronouns, a student who wants to use bathroom facilities or follow a dress code or vacillate between bathroom facilities and or dress code that does not align with the student's biological sex. Definitions. Number one, adult student means a student 18 years of age or older. Number two, biological sex means an individual's sex at birth. Number three, gender expression means an individual's way of reflecting and expressing the individual's gender to the outside world, typically demonstrated through appearance, dress, and behavior per CRS 24-34-3019. Number four, gender identity means an individual's innate sense of the individual's own gender, which may or may not correspond with the individual's sex assigned at birth per CRS 24-34-30110. Number five, minor student means a student under the age of 18. Number six, transition and gender transition means the process of shifting toward a gender role different from that at birth, which can include social transitions such as new names, pronouns, and clothing, and medical transitions such as hormone therapy or surgery. Number seven, binary is a term used to describe the classification of gender into two distinct forms of male and female. Number eight, non-binary is a term used to describe genders that don't fall into one of the two categories, male or female. Background. On June 27th, 2023, the MA Board passed the resolution regarding the privacy and protection of students as it relates to Colorado Senate Bill 08200 and Colorado House Bill 211108, Board Resolution. The Board Resolution directs MA to uphold and support the constitutional right of parents to oversee the care, custody, and control of a child as defined by the United States Supreme Court ruling known as Granville 530 US 57, 2000. The board resolution supports the privacy and protection of all students. It mandates that any student under the age of 18 choosing to express or identify as a gender that does not correlate with their biological sex must be affirmed by the student's parental, custodial, or legal guardians. For students age 18 or older, an affirmation by the student's parental, custodial, or legal guardians is not required. The board resolution mandates that a student who completes the transition procedures must further transition with a change of name and a change of gender in official school records and must conform to the dress code of the gender that they now identify or express with no vacillation. Staff education. All staff shall receive education on this policy. The executive director shall be responsible for administering the staff education, and the executive director shall have full discretion to design and implement the content of the staff education. The executive director's administering of the staff education shall align and support the MA Board's resolution and policies. Procedures. Number 1, staff initial contact with student. A, voluntary contact scenarios. A student could communicate with a staff member in a variety of ways. Perhaps a student could approach a favorite teacher or coach. Perhaps a student could approach a principal or other administrator. All staff should be educated and prepared for these and other contact scenarios. B, involuntary contact scenarios. Perhaps a student intentionally violates the uniform policy by wearing the clothing of the opposite sex. Perhaps a student tries to use a bathroom facility or locker room that does not align with their biological sex. Perhaps a student tries out for a sports team of the opposite sex. All staff should be educated and prepared for these and other contact scenarios. C, contact demeanor. A staff member should be respectful of and compassionate towards a student who either communicates or demonstrates a behavior that the student is considering gender transition. Coming forward with this communication or demonstrating a behavior is not easy for the student. All staff should be educated on how to receive this communication. Staff should avoid any behavior that could be interpreted as creating a hostile environment. Staff will avoid private or secretive counseling with the student as they are not trained mental health professionals. D, referral to school principal. After receiving the initial contact in accordance with the above, or witnessing a student demonstrating any of the aforementioned behaviors, a staff member shall refer the student to the school principal. In addition, the staff member will notify the student that the principal will be in contact with the student regarding this matter. E, follow up with the student. A staff member should not feel like they need to either increase or reduce contact with the student. Rather, the staff member should continue their existing relationship with the student. However, follow-up with the student on this specific issue will now default to the school principal. Number 2, school principal. A, initial meeting with student. The school principal, along with an assistant principal, should meet with the student and receive the student with respect and compassion. In the meeting, the principal shall inquire if the student's parents and guardians are aware of the student's desire to transition genders. The principal will further advise the student of the school's commitment to have such decisions affirmed by parents, guardians. The principal will initiate immediate contact with the parents, guardians of said student, requesting that the student and parents, guardians have a conversation with their child regarding the student's desire or intent. The principal will advise the parents, guardians, and student that any further demonstrations from the student will cease pending subsequent meetings with the principal, assistant principal, student, and parents, guardians. The principal shall initiate follow-up contact with the parents, guardians of the student within 48 hours of the initial principal contact to determine if any subsequent meetings will be required or necessitated. In the event parents, guardians advise that no follow-up or subsequent meetings will be required or necessitated, the student will be advised that any further behaviors or demonstrations will be a violation of school policies and prohibited. If the student is an adult student, then no parent guardian notification will be made without permission of the student. B, subsequent meeting with the student. If the parents, guardians, and student desire to continue in this process after having the initial conversation and the student is a minor student, the school principal with the assistant principal shall schedule a meeting with the minor student and the minor student's parental, custodial, or legal guardians as soon as possible to provide the written list of MA's procedures for the gender transition process and to disclose that the process for a minor student requires parental, custodial, or legal guardian affirmation. For an adult student, the principal is not required to meet with the adult student's parental, custodial, or legal guardians. The written list of MA's procedures for the gender transition process shall include 1, the steps to complete the process specific to minor students and adult students. 2, a list of the official school records that must be changed. 3, a discussion regarding the use of the gender-specific common bathrooms and/or the gender-specific common locker room of the student's biological sex. 4, the requirement that the student must conform to the dress code of the gender that they now identify or express with no vacillation. 5, that the appropriate campus community members would receive notification that there may be a student on the campus using the gender-specific common bathrooms and/or the gender-specific common locker room different from the student's biological sex. And 6, that other parents may view their child's Fourth Amendment right to privacy as being violated by the actions of a gender transition student, and that by way of board resolution, these parents' guardians have been encouraged to seek legal counsel. C, record change. The principal shall accept the necessary executed paperwork to effectuate the change of official school records. For a minor student, the paperwork shall be executed by the minor student and the minor student's parent, custodial, or legal guardians. D, community notice. If the student completes the transition process and requests to use the gender-specific common bathrooms and/or the gender-specific common locker room different from the student's biological sex in accordance with the board resolution, the principal should notify the appropriate campus community members without violating the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act or other applicable laws. The communication should be carefully tailored to protect the identity and privacy of the student undergoing transition. The communication should be made through Parent Square or the communication platform in use. That there may be a student on the campus using the gender-specific common bathrooms and/or the gender-specific common locker room different from the student's biological sex. E, privacy and protection of all students. Other students who are aware of said transition and/or a student that has transitioned genders through the MA mandated steps for transitioning may request to use a staff bathroom or single stall bathroom, or request a staff member to monitor the vacancy of a sex-specific common bathroom or the vacancy of a sex-specific common locker room to ensure no student is violating the privacy and protection of another student. F, support of executive director. The executive director shall serve as a resource for the principal as the principal fulfills the duties under this policy. Legal references, CRS 24-34-301, Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA, 20 U.S.C. 123G, 34 CFR Part 99, and Granville 530 U.S. 57, 2000. Cross references, board resolution from June 27, 2023, primary contacts will be the board president, executive director, and school principals. That is a draft first read. You guys are hearing for the first time tonight. I know this was sent out to you a few days ago electronically. Dane, opening this up for discussion.
Well, I just want to thank Karen and Joe for setting a foundation for this, and then to you for taking the feedback that was received and the resolution and kind of mirroring those. So I appreciate the work that we've done on all of this, and I very much support everything that's in here.
I agree with that, very nicely written compared with the work, the foundation that you guys put in, what you added, based on what our parents wanted in June at that meeting as well. We supported that.
Ask at some point that we present a legal opinion concerning this.
I did send this off to Brad Miller to be vetted. Brad Miller has provided an opinion, and we'll speak to Brad about bringing that back next month.
Do we need his permission or something? I mean, it's our privilege. do we want to discuss?
You reach out to Brad.
Okay.
You set that under a privileged confidential legal advice, so let me just make sure. Take a 5-minute recess from a phone call. Call this back to order at 8:40. Give me a moment. I'm trying to bring up communication from our legal counsel, Brad Miller. I'm going to read the email verbatim sent to the board from legal counsel Brad Miller. Dear Board and Kim, attached are two versions of your parental rights policy. In parentheses, Ryan, please note that I am suggesting that we remove the gender verbiage from the policy title. The red line version is an effort by Ryan to be responsive to the various inputs received related to the presentation of the original version. I was asked to provide input regarding the legality of the newer version. Here are my thoughts. Conventional wisdom dictates that the safe approach would be to adopt the original version of the policy, or perhaps not to adopt any policy whatsoever. Certainly, the political winds in Colorado currently would support this approach. There is broad evidence that Colorado courts are generally activist in nature and progressive in worldview. Thus, there is great likelihood that the decisions rendered in our courts would uphold individual student rights over those of their parents and of their peers. I can confidently assert that, like Susan approaching Aslan the lion, a decision to adopt the new policy will find it not to be safe. The question is whether, like Aslan, the policy also is good. Further, like the countless public health officials in 2020 who confidently asserted that masks were necessary, quarantines and distance learning were warranted, and that the Pfizer vaccine was safe, will those who blithely bypass parental rights in support of children's decisions about their identity really be the ones who made the right decision when we look back in a few years? I don't mean to evade the question. Yes, there is a level of risk that will accompany the adoption of a policy in this case. While not yet black letter law, there certainly are viable legal arguments that the governing party adopted enforceable laws that mandate and direct a charter school to acquiesce to the expressions of dysphoria on the part of students. While contrary to your personal values, it well may be that the law is found to be consistent with the Constitution. And just as historically there have been arguments about other challenging topics, abortion, same-sex marriage, slavery, age of consent, women in military, etc., 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 it also is true that courts may disagree with each other and that this issue may be so nettlesome and fact-specific that it takes years to resolve. On the other hand, you are not approaching this with an intent to conscientiously or willfully violate the law. You are, if you adopt the new policy, taking a stand in favor of a more traditional and historically conventional interpretation of family and parental rights. The recent dialogue regarding financial risk was well helpful and well timed. That sort of consideration is outside my scope. You may well wish to continue that discussion. That said, I do not think that you will find the sort of meeting of the minds that you may wish to obtain in the event that you put this back to your community for further input. The lines seem clearly drawn, so there will not be a tremendous amount of persuasion and change minds that you may want. Instead, you likely will find a fairly divided set of opinions with very little middle ground to cling to. Thus, I imagine that now is a time for each of you to step forward and stand as representatives rather than a democracy and make the hard decision. In the event you wish to move forward, either version set forth below is ready for a public presentation at your meeting Thursday and then a final vote at a subsequent meeting. You are in my prayers, Brad Miller.
Board, I'd actually like to present a few issues with the language that I see in this draft. If we'd rather do that at a later time, we'd probably do that at a later time. If someone would like to go first, that's fine. But I have a few things prepared that I would like to make the board aware of, as well as our community, regarding this draft specifically. And I can discuss a few things about how this draft is different from the draft that was presented in November, since it's really impossible for the community here to know the difference at this point. But that's all right with you guys,
Absolutely.
and I'll proceed. So, first I want to begin that there are some issues with it. Our legal counsel has told us that there is some risk to this draft, and there's probably risk to any policy along the line. And that kind of the points that I'm about to bring up, they don't necessarily reflect my feelings. As after all, I was one of the drafters of the original policy draft presented in November. But it's just that there are things that could impact the finances of the school that both the board and the community need to be aware of. And you need to understand the differences between the two policies. And I know that this is an extremely sensitive issue for our board. It is on your heart, I understand. And part of me hates to bring up sort of any opposition to the policy at all. But as treasurer, it's my job to bring up issues that might affect the finances of the school. And this is certainly one of those. So I have sort of a list of notes to go over. I'd like to ask the board for a little bit of latitude, and certainly when I'm finished, if anyone has comments, I promise to be, silent and respectful of those comments, okay? So, first, a few things just about the policy. And this is true of the original draft I worked on, as well as this draft, is that the policy tries to be many things, okay? So there's elements of a proclamation to it, there's elements of a resolution, there's a sports policy in it, there's a bathroom policy, there's a discipline policy. So it's many things. And first I want to discuss for the board and our community, what is a policy? And how does a policy differ from like a resolution that the board might pass? Well, the policy is the instructions to the staff on what to do when. Issue with a policy like this that tries to do many things is that we don't have that clarity, something Kim mentioned not long ago, for our staff. We want them to be able to know exactly what they're supposed to do when and have confidence in those actions. Really, a policy needs to be really clear and easy for the staff to follow. So let me address a few parts of the different policies that are part of this one. First, the sports policy. This version, compared to the November version, prohibits girls from being on boys' sports teams. Perhaps, unintentionally. Even though there's been, decades where this has been accepted. And one thing that happens when you try to make one policy combine many other policies is that it's easy to sort of misdraft and overwork them. I think this is one of them. So a girl could not play on boys' sports. If the bathroom policy that's sort of embedded in this, that leaves a lot of open questions about student guests, adult guests, after school, how personnel are allocated, how we're going to actually monitor the bathrooms. And so you would need a policy on top of this policy to do that. There's also then this gender transition part of the policy, and that's where I would like to focus most of my comments. So, one of the major philosophical differences between the policy that was read today and the policy in November comes down to a conflict of student rights and parent rights, okay? So, this policy requires that parents must, or that the principals must notify parents in really all instances regarding a communication or a demonstration of action by a student. So let's talk about a couple of just of those ramifications. So under this draft of the policy, if you have a model student that approaches a favorite teacher, favorite coach and says, I'm interested in transitioning genders, that student is then forwarded to the principal. The principal would then ask the student, a little bit about that, and then the principal must immediately contact the student's parents. Now, what if that student says to the principal, I beg you, don't call my dad. I don't want him to know this way. Okay? Well, in this instance, the principal is really compelled to respond that, all right, kid, your dad has rights. Now, we can talk about the situation where you have a similar student. And in this case, the principal knows there's actually an issue at home. Principal still has to make the call. It's mandated. There's no flexibility to that. So I bring it up to bring up the issue that there's sort of a conflict between parent rights and student rights that will become apparent if this is adopted. Let's talk a little bit about the sort of legal casework that this entire policy is based on. There's this case called Granville, which is referenced in the policy that was read. Facts of Granville were you have a parent that has the sort of primary custody and, providing the care for her child. And the issue is, when do, say, grandparents' rights to caring for this child supersede the parents' rights, or do the state's rights? Well, in the case of Granville, the facts are really the parents' rights versus a third party's rights, like a grandparent or the state, okay, or another third party. And that is for sure part of the policy. But what hasn't been researched by the board whatsoever is any sort of body of law on the conflict between a parent's rights and their own child's rights. We as a board haven't even researched it, yet we're drafting a mandate that the principal must contact the student's parents. So really, it's probably an issue that should be further examined before we commit to whether we're going to mandate principals to do that or not. And again, just to remind you, this was not part of the November draft. It was not compulsory, but it was permissive. Okay? Okay, so there's one other section of this draft of policy that I think is really important for both the board and our community to understand. And just to the board, I do want to point out that sort of this next part will feel a little uncomfortable, but I promise that I'm going to make this all constructive for the board and the school in the end, okay? So just ask you to bear with me for a minute. So there is a section in procedures 2B, the subsequent meeting with the student. And I'm gonna read the beginning of this sentence in just one. That was an addition compared to the November draft. The sentence reads, "The written list of MA's procedures for the gender transition process shall include, Roman numeral 6, that other parents may view their child's Fourth Amendment right to privacy as being violated by the actions of a gender transition student, and that by way of board resolution, these parents' guardians have been encouraged to seek legal counsel." There's sort of three legal issues that I can identify with this that certainly we just need to be made aware of. The first is that the text will be interpreted as prejudice. The second is that the text inaccurately references a board resolution. And third, the timing and placement of the text will be interpreted as a threat or an intimidation tactic. Now, those are some strong words, I realize, but I'm going to walk you through those arguments, okay? So first, that this could be interpreted as prejudice because it characterizes all behavior of a gender transition student as a violation. So if I read that first part of this sentence again, lower 6, that other parents may view their child's Fourth Amendment right to privacy as being violated by the actions of a gender transition student. The key word in this sentence is actions, which just in the Merriam-Webster definition is behavior, also conduct, also the doing of things. Basically, all behavior of this student is a violation. And so this is just like with the oversight concerning, girls playing on boys' sports team. We have sort of a potential just oversight here that we sort of characterized all behavior of a gender transition student. Okay? So, what we don't want someone to think is that these actions would just include going to class. Okay? But that argument, by just the literal read of this language, could be made. Now, I want you to keep in mind that a student at this point in the process of the policy is either a adult student or a student with their parents' permission. And so I want you to hold that thought because I'm going to come back to that and why that's important. Okay, the second point regarding the board resolution. So this same sentence refers to the board resolution. So it says, and that by way of board resolution, these parents' guardians have been encouraged to seek legal counsel. It's not quite an accurate application of the resolution. So resolution refers to past or ongoing actual violations of rights, while this text of the policy refers to future behavior. Okay? Those are not the same thing. So I'm going to read this text again, and then I'm going to read the resolution for you, okay? So Roman numeral, lower Roman numeral 6, that other parents may view their child's amendment, Fourth Amendment right to privacy as being violated by the actions of a gender transition student, and that by way of board resolution, these parents' guardians have been encouraged to seek legal counsel. So let me read, so here is, I have the resolution in front of me, and I'm gonna read the portion of the resolution it's referring to, which is number 9 of the resolution. And I'm gonna stop when I get to the words gender transition student. So number 9, parents should inform themselves and understand that if their child believes their right to privacy has been or continues to be violated by another student, they are strongly encouraged to advise their chosen attorney that they believe privacy is being violated and consult with said attorney on taking further legal action against the parental, custodial, or legal guardians of the offending student. So, explain why that's significant. What about other disciplinary issues? Bullying. The student and their parents meet with the principal. Who's been, accused of bullying. Do we tell that student and parents by way of board resolution that the other kids and their parents have been encouraged to seek legal counsel? Fighting. So when the principals sit down with a student who has fought with another student, do we say to them that we have board resolution that the other parents, guardians have been encouraged to seek legal counsel against you? About verbal abuse, vandalism, or theft? No. So do you see the issue? The issue of that it's prejudice is that in other cases where a violation of student rights, we're not bringing up this, I'll call it a threat of legal action. But we do when it's a gender transition student. And also, I want to point out that when a student has done another disciplinary action, has actually done this, we're not bringing it up. But we bring this up to a student going through the gender transition process, even if they haven't done anything. So, we don't encourage legal counsel for these other disciplinary issues. We can't say that regarding the future behavior. All right? So the third thing I want to bring up about this specific sentence is that the timing of the emplacement of the text will be interpreted as a threat or an intimidation tactic. So let me remind you where we are at this point in the process for a student going through this, especially a voluntary student. All right, that's one of the definitions in the policy, a voluntary contact scenario. They have met with the principal at the first meeting. They've met with the principal in this second meeting. They're either an adult student or they are with their parents. And so the last thing before getting the paperwork to just finish the process is that very sentence. Other parents may view their child's Fourth Amendment right to privacy as being violated by the actions of the gender transition student, and that the way a board resolution, these parents, guardians have been encouraged to seek legal counsel. So, you know, why does this matter? Why am I bringing this up? Well, imagine going to the office, and you have a right, you need a certain form. You need the arranged absence form, okay? You need to fill out the form to apply for a sports team. You know, there's other forms. There's like the approved driver form. There's a parking permit. You want to go and get a parking permit from the school. You fill out the form and get it. When a student or a parent has a right to a process, the process has to be frictionless. At this point in policy, like I said, they're either an adult student or they're a minor student with their parent. And so, at this point, you can't tell them that there could be legal recourse against them when they haven't done anything. So, I want you to compare our sort of gender transition process, which is, for most of the records that would be changed, it's really just a name. Okay? Let's compare that process to if you're getting your name changed at the courthouse. If you go down to the courthouse, you're an adult student, or you're a minor student with your parents, is the court going to say to you, hey, others make their actions as a violation of their privacy, and we encourage them to seek legal counsel? Imagine hearing that before getting the forms to the court for something that you would have a right to. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just trying to bring up that we have a little bit more work to do on this, because I don't want to expose the school to some issues that could have been caught earlier. So, you know, board, you've been great so far. Thank you for your patience with me tonight. I know this is not easy, and I'm almost done. So next I want to get to like how we can make this constructive. There are definitely other issues with the draft, but just in the interest of time, I'm not going to bring up any of that. So here in this draft, and primarily because we tried to make this policy do so many things, be so many policies together, I can identify a few legal issues that weren't even in the last policy. In the last policy draft in November, that was definitely not flawless either. But for example, the female student could sue under this one for the right to play on a boys' sports team. You could have a student and parent sue over the discrimination parts of this policy on how gender transition students are treated differently in sort of this process than other students going through a disciplinary issue. I could see that you might have a suit with students' rights, okay, in concerning the issue of students' rights versus parents' rights. Also, we would certainly need to further develop the bathroom monitoring part of this, and looked into that a little bit, and it's not easy. And so that would need to be handled carefully, or there could be a suit there. And of course, you have the male student who wants to play on a girls' sports team, or biological male student that would like to use the female bathroom. So it's possible that you might have a case on all of these at the same time. Yes. And that's where my concern, especially as my role as treasurer comes in. I mean, I have to bring this up. I have to bring up that there's this liability for the school. Now, part of it, like, for the board, something for us to consider and discuss, are these really the battles and the opponents? Imagine when you thought there might be a challenge to this policy. What I want to bring up is like all of these, in all these cases, we're battling our own students and parents. All of them. But it feels like to me that like the real, I'm not going to call him an enemy, but the opponent for sort of the moral direction that the board would like to go is kind of really state and national laws. So in a way, it's like we have to fight through our own students and parents in order to try to get a victory against maybe a different opponent in the long run. And so part of me wonders, is that not actually a hollow victory when we have to do that? So I do have some things like for us to maybe consider. Is try to break the policies apart. That way we can get that clarity for the staff. So if we're gonna have a sports policy, have a sports policy. That way the staff knows, they just need to look at the sports policy and know what it means and what to do. Same thing with the bathroom policy. Same thing with the gender transition policy. Honestly, the gender transition policy should be as frictionless as possible. If you're an adult student, here's your forms, away you go. If you're a minor student, you need your parents to consent. If you have that, here's your forms, away you go. There's no judgment or anything else a part of it. And there's important reason why. I think that as a board, we want to decide really what are the one or two issues that we actually want to fight on. What are the one or two battles? Just don't believe as a board we want to have a battle between students' rights or child right versus parents' right. I just don't think that we want to get into that, okay? I don't think we want to get into whether girls can play on a boys' sports team or not. If I can sense the sort of the board's intent, and this is my presumption, I don't want to speak for the whole board, but it really seems to come down to two issues. One is the use of the bathroom. Biological males shouldn't use the biological female bathroom. Second, it's probably sports. Biological males should not be on the biological female sports team. So if those are the battles that we would like to wage, if that's sort of the morals that we want to uphold, let's draft the policies backward from there so that those are the only battles that would be fought under the language of the policy. You see what I'm saying? That there wouldn't be side issues that could come up. So I think that that's my sense. I think that the Monument Academy can get there. And I know that this issue is heavy on the hearts of the community and for the board. But I'm just not sure that we're there yet. I think we can get there. But I think right now, if we adopt something along the lines of this draft, we're really just exposing the school to a lot of unnecessary financial liability. And so with that, thank you guys for the way that you listened, and I'm happy to turn this back over to the board.
Can I ask, we got this through our legal counsel on Sunday. Did you have an opportunity then to take any of these concerns to Brad before coming here tonight? To present this in front of everybody else, for, to kind of take your concerns there in the days we had leading up to this meeting?
No, but these are issues that I can spot myself as an attorney that could be liability for the school. I wanted to bring them up here.
Because, we read Brad's opinion email, so and then with those concerns, then I would want to hear what Brad would say in response to what you just brought up.
Absolutely.
Yes, I agree. Let's dissect some of the arguments. Sports policy, I don't see in here. I have one line under involuntary contact scenario. Perhaps a student tries out for a sports team of the opposite sex. If that's a point of contention, that's an easy strike through. That's the only thing in here that reference sports or athletics. Roman numeral 6. I'm also fine if, per our school's legal advice, that needs to be removed with the discussion of parents may view their child's Fourth Amendment right to privacy as being violated by the actions of a gender transition student. It's in the resolution. I can support that. I can support striking that off of this policy, understanding that we clearly state it in the resolution, and if it's a past tense thing, that it's not legally compliant. But again, I would rely on Brad's opinion on this. That is something that I'm not gonna die on that hill. When it comes to principal notifications, I will die on that hill. I am not okay with the idea of students not having their parents notified if they are minors, if they are trying to go down that process. That's where I stand. As a father, I want to know. That may not be legally okay in accordance with what Joe shared tonight. But there are risks in what we are doing, what we have been doing. In 22, when we passed that proclamation, I was told you're going to be sued. When we passed that resolution last year in June, I was told you're going to be sued. I have not seen a lawsuit. We've been threatened by the ACLU, but I have not seen any pending legal action. In the event that this board is sued for taking a stand to protect parental rights and the privacy of our students, I will be the first to bring that back before the community and say we are in the middle of a lawsuit. An action has been filed against Monument Academy. And you, as the voice of the community, the voice of this school, are going to dictate to us what direction would you like us to go. And then we can lay out all the hypotheticals, all the legal risks, all the potential financial implications to this school. And you as a community are going to dictate and say, we want you to take this fight. You will know the risk, and we will bring our legal counsel in. We will bring people to the table so you can ask those tough questions. And at that point, you may say, we want you to rescind what you're doing because the risk is too great. But right now, we're not there. And so I'm willing to take a stand, and I'm willing to engage in the risk that may come our way for taking a stand to protect parental rights and the privacy of our students. That's where I stand.
I'll jump in. I can appreciate the concept of counting the cost and weighing the risk. I'd say that the goal to avoid all possible lawsuits is very different from the goal of protecting our kids. I believe that to use what Brad said, the cultural and political winds are blowing a certain direction. They are blowing way too fast for us to take this liberty to try to get everything perfect. They will blow around the globe and hit us in the back over and over and over while we try to get it perfect. So we have to take a stand and see what happens. I support this. The changes that you want to make are fine, or you're open to making, are fine, but I support it, and I think we need to act on it right away.
We're not passing a policy tonight. This was as I mentioned before I read this was a first read draft, but the board has had no discussion. The discussion is happening right here, right now, in front of each of you. And so, what do we want to do, board? Take back some of the considerations that Mr. Michkowski has presented tonight from the legal side of it. I can ask Brad to join us on February 8th.
I'd like to see this on the agenda on February 8th.
Bessie,
For a vote.
call for vote.
We have things, we're about to bring in new leadership. I want our leadership to answer to this. We have overnight field trips that are happening. We live in a state where there are parents that are experiencing the ambiguity behind what their school says is okay for an overnight field trip. I want us to be working on those things. We've got to start. We live in a state right now that is very much telling us that we don't have rights as parents when we drop our kids off at school, and that's not where I send my kids. So, we passed a resolution back in June, and you voted in favor of it. You brought up some things now that make me wonder if that vote would be different, because you voted in favor in June, and now here we are, and there's language that you're saying you're not comfortable with. We told our community we were gonna come back with policy. Here we are 7 months later. It's time to do something, so I don't wanna wait any further. I'd like to see this back on the agenda. If we need to have Brad there to speak to some of these things, then great, but, I think we each need to decide where we stand and take a vote on it.
May I quote one more section from the resolution? July,
Sure.
was it June? Okay. This is section 3 of the resolution that is referenced in the policy today. Number 3, the board affirms that MA should support the privacy and dignity of each student and shall not discriminate against individuals in violation of state or federal law, regardless of the sex, gender expression, and/or gender identity. Okay? Let's sign that resolution. To get back to the next meeting and topics, I would love to hear more information from legal counsel on the student versus parents' rights issue. What is the body of law that makes up that? What is the current state of that? How does Granville apply to that? I think that would help us as a board make decisions regarding the language on whether we can mandate principals to call the parents or not. I think it would be a good education opportunity for our community.
That's the question of our time right now. That is probably not going to have a clear-cut answer, but that doesn't mean we don't act.
From the parental engagement we had back in June, and I think we understood the risks then. And why, I appreciate you bringing them up, the financial risks of it, but I think why I want to see this back on the agenda in February for a vote is because I believe back then we drew the line in the sand. I don't think any tweaks or any adjustments that we make to the policy is going to change that risk. Because if they want to have that risk at us, they're going to have that risk. They're coming no matter what. So For me, I think we drew the line in the sand last summer, and I would like to see it on the.
Happy to have that question presented to Brad, Student Rights versus Parent Rights. Let him provide his take on there. I'm not a lawyer. Don't pretend to be a lawyer. Just stand on the side of doing what is right. As I put in the proclamation, and some will disagree with me on this, and as was stated in the resolution, I stand to support natural law and moral truth. And I risk associated that may come. As a member of this board, as I said earlier, if we are sued, litigation is brought against this school for the policy, for the resolution, or for the proclamation, you as a community are going to be aware of that. I want to make that crystal clear. There will be potential risk, exposure associated with litigation against this school. We can all acknowledge that. But we all took a stand with that resolution for the privacy of our students and to protect parental rights. And that policy that we're talking about tonight aims to do just that, except further codify that and give clear direction. When I read through this, I don't see ambiguity. I see a clear directive to how this is going to play out with our principals. And I understand Mr. Buczkowski's concern with student rights versus parental rights. So we'll further answer that question with our legal counsel, but I'm also in favor of, I would like to see a policy on the agenda for a final vote. And we can always delay that vote next month after hearing from legal counsel, but I will check with Brad to see if he can join us on January 8th for the discussion topics that Joe's presented tonight. And then all need to determine where we stand.
On which date?
February 8th, say January.
So Brian, I think that Joe brought up some good legal arguments when it came to 2B6, and you mentioned having that portion removed. So is that something that when you bring forward the draft, that will be removed?
Yes, I will reach out to legal, and if legal says yes to striking that portion, then I can remove that. I don't know where Brad's gonna stand. Brad read through this policy, as he indicated in his email. Is there any further changes
Other than the title.
other than the title? Aaron, did you have some other points?
Well, my thought was Brad may want to listen to this portion of the meeting, because I thought Joe was very articulate as to why it's, the way that it's worded, it could be interpreted as discriminatory. So I think we need to consider that before we move forward with this current version.
When he was bringing up that point, my thought was, just let it go, let that part go, the lowercase 6, is that right?
Didn't delete it.
Just delete it.
That's what I'm asking.
Right.
Do you
You as a board can prescribe to me right here, right now, to delete 2B6. And if that's what you would like to do, then
Because it's also a little unclear, are we directing our principals to say, hey, other parents, you guys need to sue? You know,
No.
like, that's what I mean, it's not like a directive, what Joe was pointing out about it being policy is steps that our staff should carry out, right? So to me, it's in the resolution, it doesn't necessarily need to even be in the policy, so to speak, unless we are directing somebody on staff or on the board or whoever to do something.
And to Joe's point, in the resolution, it's worded differently, that has a different meaning than it has here, so that's why I think it should be removed.
I'm fine with letting that go too, that was just my, if it's problematic, I think it's fine to be dropped, that was my thought.
the premise behind that clause was to let the parents of that child know
That they have rights.
that the other students in this school our belief is that they have a right to privacy. And by way of resolution, those other parents have been encouraged to seek legal counsel if they feel that their parents' rights, or their students' rights to privacy were violated. But I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm not dying on this hill over 2B6. I'm good with what's in the resolution. And if it has a different legal argument in the resolution versus a policy, and you feel it would bring a little more of a safety net to this policy, I can get behind that.
And Ryan, and to your point, I feel like the community notice part of it covers us there as far as letting the rest of the community understand what's going on at the school, if that makes sense.
The community notice for me was two separate issues.
Okay,
The notification to the family of a student that was going down the path of transitioning, those parents would be alerted to the fact that other parents in this school community may view their child's right to privacy being violated if they're going to continue down this road of allowing their student to transition. That was the premise behind that. Again, I'm not stuck on leaving this in the policy, so if this board, what I'm hearing tonight,
just so you understand my position, I am all for letting other parents know.
Yep.
I'm all for letting parents understand that they have rights as well, and their child's rights to privacy have maybe been violated. My confusion is the ambiguity in who notifies them of that. Are we saying that's the principal's job? You know, that's the issue there for me.
yeah, I mean, that's
Part of what
a subsequent meeting with a student, with a principal, assistant principal, the minor student, and the parents.
Oh, and that, okay, I understand now, that you're letting the parent of the transitioning child know that other parents may view this as,
That's correct.
okay.
But again, it's in the resolution.
So if you took that out and a principal communicated that to a parent and a kid, would that be putting the principal in danger to communicate that information without this here?
Without it,
Yeah.
at that point, it becomes at the discretion of the principal if they want to share the resolution.
Okay, so the resolution still covers it, covers the principal.
So Karen, to answer your point, and based,
Okay, one more suggestion. Could we just say that other parents may view their child's Fourth Amendment right to privacy as being violated, period? That way, you're not putting the culpability or the actions or the behavior or the conduct of the transitioning child. To me, it's also a counseling of the parents of the gender transitioning child that you might be at risk of legal action by other families.
Good point. I think that
It might be a little bit of a counsel there for them.
That's a good point, though. It's not any of the principal's business. A suit or a conflict between one
Two
student
families.
and another student, or a parent and another parent, that the school honestly shouldn't interject in. And so you end up kind of back into that same argument that I made.
we'll still talk to legal, and we'll strike this, present something without 2.6 in there. And you as a board can ultimately override me striking this and put it back in if you choose to do so. But tonight, though, is to go ahead and proceed forward with striking that from 2B6.
Could it be rewritten to reflect the resolution language better? So that you could get your intent of, that's,
Okay.
or are you
The
still
issue of
having
the
the same
intent.
issue?
What is the intent there for? You know what I'm saying? It's like you're go into the courthouse to get your forms to change your name, and then they give you a warning, like, why would they give you a warning other than that? Just want to stay clear of anything like that. Like, you're gonna have to pick your battles.
One other thought I had is, overnight trips. Policy doesn't address that at all.
I could see us needing to do some amendments or attachments as they.
And then the sports thing, I understand you were just using it as an example of something, you know, the way the student might express or try something, but currently, you know, we have girls that play on the football team. So, you know, I'm not taking a position either way about that, I'm just saying that is currently what happens at Monument Academy. And I don't know how it affects this, those are just other things, but we could take that out as an example, because that is currently what happens at our school.
That was some feedback we received from the community on having a policy for athletics. I did not intentionally try to incorporate a policy for athletics if that is how this is viewed. This was
I don't think we did either, but I'm just saying.
This
like,
was a involuntary contact scenario, perhaps a student tries out for a sports team. I do think that this issue will be presented to us, and we as a board are going to have to make a decision on athletics. But my intention was not to add that into this particular policy.
I don't believe it was, Ryan. It's just so hard to draft this stuff when it encompasses so many ideas. I know from taking my own attempts at trying to draft this very policy. So I don't believe it was intentional. With regard to sports though, I do want you guys to maybe consider the involuntary contact scenario paragraph with the initial meeting with student paragraph, because I together those two prohibit girls playing on boys. I would like to read it as well again myself to make sure I understood it the first time.
How does it, I'm not seeing how it would prohibit anybody from doing any of them. It's just saying perhaps these things could happen and therefore the staff should be prepared to.
Take the next steps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that.
It's
I see
it's
that
an
too.
example of a situation that could arise that would then trigger the next steps in the process.
Right. It doesn't say you can't try out for a sports team.
Is it okay if I walk through it here?
I mean, I can see how somebody could want to make that argument, but it seems pretty thin.
Oh, let's start in involuntary contact scenario. I think it's undisputed that a girl trying out for the boys' sports team falls under involuntary contact scenario. Then, part D, referral to school principal. So a student demonstrating any of the aforementioned behaviors, okay, so that's where we trigger the meeting with the principal. Then the meeting with the principal then says, the student will be advised that any further behaviors or demonstrations will be a violation of the school's policies and prohibited. That's where I get this.
Gotcha.
For the purposes of this policy and moving things forward, we could just perhaps take that out.
And then address
That
the separate
example.
sports policies, yes.
Karen? In this particular, perhaps a student tries out for a sports team of the opposite sex.
Oh, I think it should be taken out for the
Stricken.
same reasons, yeah.
Ross?
Is it different, the other examples in letter B are not being considered for taking out because we already have like a dress code and then, and a bathroom policy? Is that why we're singling out the sports one?
Just perhaps a student tries out for a sports team of the opposite sex. I'm hearing local majority on this board that would
Sure.
like that stricken in this policy.
My only issue with it is what I just brought up before,
Sure.
that we currently have both genders playing on the same sports teams.
Okay, I was
And
wondering
so
why we
it's-
wouldn't consider the other ones as well. But
Oh,
that-
yeah,
Not that I want to, but
right.
just trying to understand.
Right, board, you've given me some marching orders. I will have a revised final draft to present on February 8th. I will speak with legal counsel about having them in attendance at that meeting.
I just wanna say I'm good with the direction of this, with some of the thoughtful points that were brought up. I'm good with the general direction of this.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. That will complete our board discussion action. Board comments, announcements is next on the agenda. Mr. Ross, would you like to speak to the 2024 Board of Directors election?
Yes, sir. We are, let's see, where are we? We're having an election. MA Community will be electing 2 directors to the board this year. Each elected director serves a 3-year term, and that has already launched. I've sent out on Parent Square the information on how to apply for that if you're interested. I'd love to have you do that, and I'll just read a little bit of what is required for that. MA bylaws outline the qualifications needed to serve on the board. Simply put, you must be 25 years old or older and a parent or guardian of a Monument Academy student. In addition, board members must be committed to students and their education, have enthusiasm for Monument Academy and conviction in its purpose, and be willing to give time and energy to the school. Like I said, we have 2 spots that will be open, and I'd love for, if you know anybody or if you are feeling the nudge, we need people who are committed, especially in times like this, as we as a board take these types of stands. We really need people like yourselves. I really appreciate you being here tonight. So please consider that, and if you know somebody, please tap them on the shoulder and just look on the Parent Square app to figure out how to, I saw a tap already, how to apply, and we'll get you all the information.
Mr. Ross? January 17th, 2024 Board Cafe Chat. Would you like to speak to that, Mrs. Cody?
Yeah, so, Mrs. Belisle and I will be, conducting a board cafe chat on January 17th, and I will put the RSVP information and all of that in the board highlights. And then, I just was going to see if there are 2 board members that would look at scheduling something in the month of February.
I can do that.
Karen and. Okay. Good. Okay, that's that.
This, I believe we've already discussed, but just as a reminder, January 31st, 6:30 PM, will be a special meeting. Just gonna put that in my phone. January 31st, it's a Wednesday, 6:30 PM, location to be determined. Any other new business? Folks, then we are adjourned, and we have no citizen comments, not pertaining to agenda items. Thank you.
Thank you.